Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Really.
it's been a weird time. I'm just glad I could have an OG such as yourself. To everyone listening, this is Christopher, also known as Crizzly, Chain Hang Low Crizzly. Been around forever, Crizzly,
Yeah,
and
I'm old.
wow, like
Old
have
school, OG.
OG for sure. Um, so have you ever really seen anything like this happen in your time in this industry ever?
Oh, definitely not. This is the first time everything's just been like halted. Like people go through phases where they don't like, have shows or do anything
Hmm.
and take breaks, which is awesome. But this is like an extended break that nobody was ever expecting. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy thing to be experiencing. But I'm definitely thankful for it. It's definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things and, staying stay looking on the bright side mostly thanks to my friends and everybody. But yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like that's the only way when it comes down to how long this shit has lasted. That's the only way to go about it.
Mhm.
And I feel like having that like support group there, because I know you're roommates with Aaron, right?
Yeah,
Heritage.
yeah.
And then is he your only roommate, or do you have like other homies who live with you?
I have one other roomie. He's actually from Florida.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, I met him a long time ago, and he just wanted to like help out, and he did my merch for a while. He like helped me
Nice.
design a bunch of stuff, but he was just like, yeah, I want to get out of Florida, or he was in like kind of like West Palm Beach area,
Okay.
and he's just like, I just need to get out of here, and try to do something different. And I was like, yeah, come to Texas, and he's been here for like 4 years now, but
Fuck yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. I feel like Texas and Florida has been a bit similar compared to, the rest of the United States in like the
yeah, super
approach per
similar.
se. Where, there were definitely like precautions taken. But I just remember when everyone, even in LA, they were like, okay, it's gonna be 2 weeks. You guys have 2 weeks of being shut down, stay inside. Everyone was all right with it. And then the 2 weeks became 2 months, and the 2 months became half a year, and now it's been a year, and now everything's starting to open back up. And from like your point of view, you've seen people from everywhere on the West Coast start to move into Texas. So is
Oh
this
yeah, yeah.
changed? Like, how have you seen kind of a change in the different type of people coming down? Like all of big tech, so many artists as well.
Yeah, massive. Yeah, yeah, it's a good thing to bring up. I don't know if anybody else notices it, but everybody in Texas definitely notices it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge change. Yeah, there's yeah, all these tech companies moving out here, a bunch of different people from Cali, a lot of my friends from Cali moving out here, industry people too as well. Austin's always been like a good hub for music. So there is a few really key people that moved from LA to here, which is awesome. And
That's
that's honestly
amazing.
what got me like that's what got me excited through the whole thing was knowing that there's just like this big movement happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got excited like thinking about preparing for it because like once things open up it's like game on. And that's really what got me excited about it. Here, I'm gonna put
Absolutely. Have you guys kind of gotten to that moment where you're like, okay, it's fucking game on because you passed Ooby Dooby, and now that Ooby Dooby's been thrown, you just got announced on Freaky Deaky. Congrats. I'm sure you're fucking stoked.
thank you.
Like hometown festival. I've seen like shows starting to be thrown, like Grime Fest and other kind of promoter companies have started to put things together in Texas. But I've heard in Texas, even though you guys kind of allow 100% capacity now, people are still wearing their masks and still being, precautious and all of that stuff. Is that true, or like not really? No one gives a fuck.
Yeah, it's true. There in the beginning it was more so, but now it's kind of they're like kind of like being not as strict. There was some
Mm-hmm.
venues that we would go to and they'd be super strict. They kick you out for not wearing a mask. But right now it's like kind of just up in the air. I think even in Austin or in all of Texas, it's basically open. And I mean, you have to wear a mask in stores and everything, but it shows. It's just like I don't know. It's kind of like.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. It's like when you played at Ritz, it was like
Mhm.
the first time because they were kicking people out for quite some time. We've obviously been open since last fall when everything was kind of like, hey, you guys do you. But they just passed like a bill that's coming into play where they're not allowing on a local level anyone to enforce the masks anymore, which was a huge step that happened yesterday. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
curious to see moving forward how places like Ritz and how venues are going to handle it, because you can't really, I guess it's private property, so they can only choose if they want, somebody to be wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. But I feel like it's to each their own at this point. But the vaccine was definitely like our saving grace for sure.
Definitely, things are opening up. It's crazy, and yeah, LBW. I guess that was a giant experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up not going. I just got kind of nervous. I knew it was going to be like not a shit show, but it was going to be like I don't know. I get anxiety in crowds in the first place,
I'm
and
the same way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's and I'm just used to being like, like driven from the hotel to the venue and have everything taken care of. But I wasn't on the lineup, so I didn't want to like ask for like everything and kind of bug Donnie and bug everybody. So I didn't end up making it, but all my friends that went said it was amazing and they had a good time. So I'm thankful that everything went good.
I'm just thankful, yeah, that it wasn't a huge fucking disaster, because
Mhm.
I feel like if it was a disaster, we would be in a much different place right now
Oh
with
yeah.
everything being announced. And he fucking pulled it off. I mean, I'm all for the outspoken individual, but if your actions speak like louder than words, he did it. And like it really does come to each their own. Like it was an outside event, and the videos are massive. The videos look like it's pre-COVID, but what can you expect to do? Like what can you expect it to look like when the UCF is having, or UFC is having, the inside fucking event with 15,000 people, and then you've got the draft happening in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's the same amount of people outside. You can't, I don't know, it's very interesting how just the general consumer and fan of music has kind of pinpointed in this scene, and we see that thanks to the lovely Twitter, the lovely Bird app, how people have opinions and stuff. And I just feel like it comes down to the fact of, if you have a vaccine, that's great. If you don't have a vaccine, you should probably try and fucking get one. And then it's like, hey, if you don't feel safe, stay home, see how it plays out. And then if you
Mhm.
do go, like that was your option, that was your action that you took on yourself. So you can't get mad at anybody else, for the
Yeah.
ramifications.
I think for all those reasons, that's why it ended up happening and it went
Mm-hmm.
smoothly because people have, their own option to go or not go. And everything's, starting to open up. It's happening slowly and at a good pace, I feel like personally. But yeah, I think shouts out to Disco Donnie basically for being, the person to take the hits for this one. But I think he did a great job. And he's honestly someone that I've always looked up to, honestly, more than like most DJs. I remember the
Yeah.
first time I met Donnie, I was probably 19 or 20, going to one of my first festivals. Actually, no, it's like second or third. There's always been camping festivals in Texas. It's a really good rave scene here in Austin. But I met him, backstage hanging out with like Paris Hilton, and
Oh my God.
I gave no fucks for Paris Hilton. I was just like Disco Donnie, like you're my idol.
Right? He's
Yeah,
a pioneer.
yeah, and I was a promoter when I first started. I look up to him because he makes sure that the vibes are right at all his parties, and he cares mostly about that. Like, or, him and Pasquale, combined or care about making sure the party is on point. And
Hmm.
as a DJ, I try to DJ for a crowd and make sure everybody else is happy. That's really my main goal. And that kind of puts me in the weird category of like DJ slash promoter. And that's why I always looked up to Donnie. I was like, he's throwing the best shows, making sure the crowds are always lit, best times, best lineups. And yeah, so as soon as I met him for the first time, it was like meeting my idol.
That's fucking awesome, because it's cool because you do have a kind of rare approach to, being the DJ on the stage, because you have been in the promoter's position. So you know what an event is supposed to be like, how you're supposed to push tickets, how you're supposed to make people happy. So I'm sure that is, helped you over the years bring the right set and like reading the crowd and all of that stuff. Are you someone that, I guess, per se, you'll get up there and you'll feel the vibe and you'll go from there, or you're like, hey, like this is my set, I'm sticking to it, X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth. I think in the beginning I was on the side of like let me feel the crowd or like kind of like gauge it because I actually started with a residency in San Antonio And
Oh, nice.
that's why I always thought it was awesome that like you and Mikey had like that residency at
Yeah,
the Ritz.
absolutely.
That's I think that's such a powerful thing to have under your belt to just like take on any type of crowd. And that's what I had in the beginning. And I kind of lost that for a few years because I was doing the Crizzly dubstep act, you know, for so long. And,
Yeah.
you know, everybody just kept trying to go harder and harder and harder. And I was keeping up for a really long time, like always having like a really hard set. But I think I became a touring act at some point, and then I had to take a step back and realize what I was actually good at and what I should be doing, and I had to like kind of recalibrate things. But I think you can shift back and forth. And there's situations where I'm always going like, this is my set, like I have an hour to really like prove a point, so this is what I'm gonna play. But then there's other times where you pull up to a party and you just want to like see what everybody's feeling and kind of cater to what the vibes are and not really just like come out swinging like you know
Yeah,
scaring people
absolutely.
away. I think sometimes when you go this is why I wouldn't go hard on some occasions. You could potentially scare people who have never heard the music before, and they're gonna be they're not going to be as likely to fall in love with dance music because they just weren't used to it, they weren't ready. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my goal, is to get people into the scene and get people to like enjoy the music and feel comfortable with it. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm trying to like build a community, honestly, and get people into dance music. And yeah, that's always been my top goal.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's just so heavy nowadays. The music gets so heavy. And like sometimes you just walk up to sets. I remember like I would be at festivals, especially when I was just a consumer, just a lover of music. And I'd walk up to certain places and I love good dubstep. And I'd be like, damn, dude. I was like, I'm not angry enough for this shit. Like, I want to
Yeah,
have fun. Like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And especially because you look at like the average festival goer and you'll have one diehard fan of maybe this artist, maybe this genre, but then you've got 5 or 6 other people who, hey, it's my first fucking festival. I want to go and hear some songs I know. I want to hear some cool switch ups and all of that stuff. And I feel like being a resident is something that has taught me, and I'm sure you in your beginning days, like how to do that correctly and how to experiment with that and like fail epically and also
yeah,
be like, hey, like I know how to play this mainstream song, make an edit in Ableton, bring in an unreleased ID, and then in the span of 2 minutes, you got someone, introduced to this genre. And like, I just feel like that doesn't exist as much anymore.
yeah. You
Um,
being a resident really is a flex on that. And obviously talking to you, you understand that there's like a huge dynamic to that. You're getting people like the free parties that you do
mhm.
for those residencies are where you really build the community, and you're trying to like get people out who don't normally come out. And that's why I've always thrown my free parties. I think even at the Ritz, it was a free party. But
Yep.
that's something that I like. I like to like put on promoters. I'm like, hey, I'll do it for this rate, but make the party free, please, because like I just want people to have a good time. And yeah, I think it's really cool to talk to someone that honestly gets residencies because
A lot
yeah,
of people don't get it, and it's very weird, coming as a new artist where you obviously have been in the scene for a very long time, very seasoned, because I feel like when I first started crossing that line of, hey, like I made music before I learned how to DJ. Like I did not know how to DJ. My second gig ever was at the Ritz. They had me on Saturdays playing house music. I fucking hated it. But it like taught me how to read a room. It taught me how to DJ. It taught me how to know all of these different subgenres. But when I was like, okay, I'm ready to start, I had some strong releases, started bridging that gap. I felt like there was like an illegitimacy because I was a resident and because you weren't like an artist. And like maybe that's a form of like self-consciousness or insecurity, but did you ever go through that when you were bridging the gap? I know it was a lot different time
yeah.
though too.
No, I understand completely where your head's coming from. I see a lot of other younger producers going through that challenge in their head of like, no, I want to make the transition to artist, and not just
Mhm.
a DJ. But they're two different things, and they go hand in hand, and you can be good at both. There's not like, you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. It's being a good DJ and reading a crowd is a skill set all on its own that a lot of people don't develop. And you said it earlier, you said like there was a lot of failure involved with,
Oh
with
yeah.
trying new things out. And that's exactly what it is. You have to fail a lot, and you're making yourself susceptible to failing by just like, experimenting with things. But that experimentation is what gets you to another level of understanding what works and what doesn't work in a live environment, which ultimately makes you a better producer on the other side.
Absolutely. Because the first thing that I like kind of teach to my students who are DJs is like, hey, like, you guys know how to mix, you guys know the structure, you know the arrangement because you know how to DJ. So it's like, take that and start referencing that and building from there. And it's just like, I don't know, it's definitely, it's really cool to see people like you. I had no idea you were ever a resident, and people like Blunts Blondes and Nitty Gritty, because you can bridge that gap and have that long term kind of goal in mind. And I feel like being a resident gives everybody their first foot in the door, whether it's to prove themselves, whether it's to get to know people. But I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at now or have the ground by playing so often that I have in like the foundation if I wasn't a resident. And
Yeah.
that's where I think people sometimes undermine the job title per se.
Yeah, I mean, everything's hard in in the industry. Like, you got to pick what you're good at. And I think during quarantine, I took a step back and realized, like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I good at? And then I think I had this epiphany where I realized, like, I'm not just a producer. I do
Mm-hmm.
all these different things, and I want to kind of elaborate on those things. And I think the focus for a lot of EDM right now is just like make beats, make beats, make beats, and then
As
go on
quick as
tour.
you can, as
Yeah,
quick as you can,
yeah.
get them out. And they have a shelf life of 72 hours, and then everybody fucking forgets about them, and it's like,
Yeah.
it sucks,
Yeah, it does suck, and it's the game. I just didn't want to play that game at the moment. I mean, I'll get back into it because I think it's important,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that I was like, hold up, I don't need to be playing this game. This isn't why I'm here. The reasons why I'm here is because I wanted to build a community, and I just had all these epiphanies during the break, the hiatus that we all had, and I realized that it was about like building those friendships, meeting club owners, meeting like festival promoters, meeting the people who are actually like working the scene and trying to build the scene. And that kind of became my focus for the last, like, I guess, like, yeah, like 8 months maybe. Just like
That's
really
dope.
focusing in on building the community. And then I started throwing my parties again. I've always been throwing these parties called Lifted or
Okay.
Sasking.
I was about to ask you
Texas.
about that because there's very few. I knew you threw your own parties because Shambach was telling me about
Hmm.
that when you were
Shout
at the
out
Ritz the
Alex.
other day. I know, shout out Alex. He was saying too, like, the fact that you threw a free party, it was slam that night, but he's like, man, Crizzly just always brings this group of people that we don't have at Ritz. And it's like, that's the point though. That's how you build the community.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what you
Exactly.
were doing. So I understand the back end of that. But on the other side, it's like you also throw your own shows. So like, how long have you been doing that? And has this always been something that you've kind of co-aligned with Crizzly and like with your project?
Yeah, definitely. It's always been like a local driven thing. I try to get like a lot of my local DJ friends. They don't get to play that often. They only play at
Mm-hmm.
shows,
Yeah.
because a lot of the EDM scene is just shows, and
Yeah.
and they don't get like those reps in the gym. So I throw these parties, and I try to throw as many of my friends on it as I can. Like, here, get some practice, and then I'll hop in there and like go back to back with them and get them warmed up and feeling like, okay, I can do this, and kind of build their confidence up a lot. And then at the same time, I'm growing the local scene by getting more people out, and not a normal crowd, because when you throw a dubstep show, it's really hard to get new people in the scene because the tickets will be what, like $30-$40, and
Yep.
someone who's never been to a show before isn't gonna pay that just because, like, I mean, if they haven't heard the artist, why would they pay that
Why
much?
would they? Why
Yeah.
absolutely would they? And is there any place in Texas that like does those kind of free range shows, like guest list shows, that you just kind of have a big list and it's a legitimate artist, or not really?
Yeah. So I think the culture really started for me. That type of mentality of the free party culture really started for like South by Southwest,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess you could relate to that because of Miami Music Week. I don't know
Yes.
if, well, it's different in Miami because everything has like a cover charge there.
Yeah, it's very bougie. It's definitely
Super
bougie.
bougie.
South
Yeah.
South by Southwest is something I've never been to Texas, so I cannot wait to. I'm a very like multifaceted kind of music lover where I started in like metal and post-hardcore and now I do EDM. So South by
Nice.
Southwest seems like one of those just amazingly curated festivals where it's just like, hey, we're just coming and come for like the love of music and we're going to do this set on a fucking RV and do this through
Yeah,
the street. Like
it's
it's
pretty
so
renegade like
cool.
that. Yeah, it's pretty renegade. The whole concept of it, I guess, what started it was that like this is your South by Southwest was a chance where an artist could break out or meet their manager, meet their agent. Um, that's where I met my ex management that really like helped me elevate my
Mm-hmm.
my artistry, I guess. But all the parties there are free basically with guest list, and you can like meet, you connect with a bunch of people. You meet other artists that are also aspiring to like be on that same level, and it's just like a melting pot of like of driven people, and it's all free. And it's
That's
just a
amazing.
downtown party, and it's a lot like Miami Music Week. You just get to connect with everybody in the scene, and you run into
Industry
people.
people everywhere.
Yeah, it's all industry people everywhere, and I love that. And that's also the family that you're now joining. It's like it really is like a giant family. And I think that's what I really care about. I love making music, I love DJing, and I love meeting this giant family and being a part of it and helping it grow. And I really think like those are my goals essentially.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like it's so important to like have an evolution in your career, whether that's like reinventing your sound or being like, hey, like I really want to start my own label. I really want to head up this promotion company, event company, da da da. And it's like your focus on building the community is like that's like this evolution where like you have utilized your platform like as Crizzly, as this touring artist for a decade plus, and now because of your name you're able to stand on this platform and like help the next group of up and comers kind of come to fruition and keep expanding that community because you have so much experience under your belt as being a touring artist. So you've seen everything, you've seen all the different markets.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I'm trying to help out with, like a lot of the bass artists here in Austin and San Antonio. There's actually a bunch of great
There's a
producers coming up
bunch.
right now. I'm so excited.
So who are some that you should definitely plug right now?
Oh yeah, well obviously Heritage, my roommate.
Yes, yes.
He's
Oh, so talented.
he's the best. I don't know. I don't have to say anything other than that.
No,
He's
you don't.
literally the best. But he moved here from Portland, so but he's Texas. He's Texas as fuck now.
Yeah.
Then who else? Blaze in San Antonio. He's
Mm-hmm.
killing it. He's going on tour. He's actually touring and doing his own artist stuff outside of the local scene. So that's awesome. But I mean, he still needs help, like meeting some club promoters in San Antonio to help drive the scene. So I've been working with him on some of that stuff.
That's
Days
awesome.
Off, Sora, Pyro, Prosecute.
I've
Um,
literally had all of these guys on my radio show.
oh
Like
yeah,
like I see them from like a distance and it's like, yeah, that whole like gridlock management team, like Perry
yeah,
Wayne, Blaze, Hey, Pyro, like all those
yeah.
guys who are in Texas, like there's some strong ass players. And it's just crazy because I don't know, like maybe you could offer some form of advice here. It's like, are you supposed to, because I look at those guys and they're really building themselves up on their own. They're doing the small club shows, they're doing the individual tour stops. Is that the right way to go about it versus waiting to be a placeholder on a large talent agency and then you get
hmm
put as support on a large tour? Because it's like you see that dividend. And I sit here and I go back and forth in my mind all the time like, should you be playing those small rooms or should you be in the studio working on music waiting for this support slot on the big tour, waiting
Yeah.
for this support slot on the big show, you know?
I feel like that's exactly what you and a lot of other producers are going to. I mean, you teach, and I'm sure you're trying to give the best advice possible. But I think
Yeah.
the honest answer is there's no right or wrong way. Like you have to do what you're truly passionate about, whether that's playing small shows or like doing whatever. But it's a personal choice. It's not about like what you should and shouldn't do. It's what gives you energy at the end of the day. Like what makes you want to wake up and actually keep doing it. Because if you don't want to be a resident DJ, then don't do it. You're just
Yeah.
going to get drained. But if you
Mm-hmm.
want to do it and you enjoy that, like getting practice and getting up there and doing that, then do it. And if you just want to stay at home and be a producer, do that. That's fine. And there's really no right or wrong way. You should honestly find out what works best for you, that so that you don't drain, your cup and not have that energy to show up basically. But there's no right or wrong way, honestly.
Yeah, and that's why I think this industry is so like beautiful too, because there isn't a set A to Z, step and path to get where you want to go. Like you can learn from the experience of, inspirations and people you look up to and friends and people above your level, but at the end of the day, it's like it has to be what works for you. And I just see so many up and comers and established artists. It's like they're beating a dead horse because they don't enjoy what they're doing, and then they just like
Yeah.
run themselves into the ground.
I mean, I was in that position for sure. I was trying to get those releases out, trying to make my agents and my managers happy. Excuse me, with just like selling tickets, and it's like this is not what I want to be. I don't want to be a hard ticketed artist that just has to sell out every tour stop, because once you get to that spot of selling hard tickets, then the only goal is sell out, sell out, sell out, sell out. And if you don't hit that, it's a shitty feeling every time, and it is hard as hell to sell out a show in a different state every single time.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that's not what I enjoy out of doing this, is like forcing myself to do that. But sometimes it happens organically, and that's just what some people are good at. I have friends that like crush it on that end of just making sure that they're hitting the check boxes for what you're supposed to be doing. And that's hard, but they love it. And shouts out to them for crushing it. But sometimes not everybody can handle it, and it there's so much baggage too when it comes with being a musician, being an artist, and that's why I talk about uh protecting your energy, or just doing what gives you energy, because it is so draining being an artist if
Mhm.
you don't protect yourself or protect your energy.
And it's so easily being influenced by the energy around you and being influenced by what this person thinks is best for you and what this person thinks is best for
Right.
you. But like at the end of the day, it's like you do have to take a step back. And it's like whether that's 6 months into your career, 10 years, 20 years, and be like, hey, like, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Or it will become miserable.
Yeah.
And so you were obviously like a hard ticket selling, act for a very long time. When did that point come when you were like, hey, like this maybe isn't exactly what I want to do solely as an individual?
Yeah, it was a slow process of really realizing that, but there would be like a couple of shows where I would show up and it wasn't a dubstep crowd. And I was like,
Okay.
wait a second, I'm a dubstep artist. Why, like, like I'm just gonna do what I do. And that gave me a gross feeling inside, because it's not where I started. Those weren't my roots of just doing
Mm-hmm.
a dubstep show. It was like me being able to, like mix different genres and blend them all together and make people enjoy new types of music without them knowing it. That's what I honestly get a kick out of. So I was showing up to these shows probably around like 2017, 2018, and playing mostly dubstep. And then it wasn't being like received as it normally was sometimes, because it wasn't the right crowd. And I wasn't reading the crowd right, and I was just kind of having this like thought, like like it just didn't feel good. It felt gross. I think what one of the one of the biggest moments for me to realize that was this after party set that I had to play for Pasquale. He just asked me to like hop on, and I was like, of course. And I was just like, searching through stuff, searching through my folders, and I was like, man, nothing's like the vibe right now. And I was like, I don't want to play dubstep, but that's all I had. And I was going back to back with another like major headliner that like was, I'm not gonna name any
Yeah, no, for sure.
names, but it was just like, yeah, we had was just like literally like headlining festival music, and it was 6 a.m. on the Vegas Parkway. And it's just like, and the person who was supposed to be playing that we just took over was like, this isn't the main stage. And I was like, I know, I'm sorry.
You're
I,
like, I know, I'm so sorry.
I honestly wanted to play like mostly hip hop. I thought that would have been cool, a cool vibe, but I didn't have my hip hop ready, or like all that
Yeah.
ready, and it was just like frustrating for me. And it's kind of like one of those like nightmares, where you have where your USB doesn't work, and
Oh my God.
everybody has that. But it
Oh,
was it was
yeah.
like that, but I didn't have the right music for the crowd, and that was a gross feeling. And I was like, I don't like this. And I just had to recalibrate. And that's what the weeklies do for me. The residencies that I have, they really
Mhm.
like help me ground myself and make me realize like, oh, this is what I love. Like I love like finding all this new music, experimenting with it, failing, but having that playground to fail at is where I really draw a lot of my passion from. So it was around that time when I like started feeling that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like, when you're going from city to city, you don't necessarily have that playground. And,
Yeah,
like, that, and, that's how I look at Ritz, is I look at it as my playground. So when I go other places, I'm like, all right, these are the 10-minute segments of each set I've played over the last 10 weeks that I know are going to fucking floor them
yeah,
and get
you know
them
they're
in.
gonna smash.
Yeah, yeah. So they're going to smash. And it's like, that's the cool part. But it's like what you were talking about earlier as well, from a hard ticket standpoint, is, you can sell out venues in your region and in your market, and you can go hundreds of miles away and sell 5 tickets. And I think that's the hardest part that I find my head wrapping around is, hey, you're focusing on this, you're focusing on this area, but what about the other 10 areas, and what about the other 100 cities that throw shows? And it's a very interesting progression as an artist that I just don't think a lot of people understand or conceptualize the back end of. And it's stressful, it's fucking stressful. So it's really awesome that you were able to kind of find that middle ground and happy place that you were able to, reflect and say, okay, this is what I enjoy and this is what I can bring to the table. Because I think some people go their whole career shelf life without having that moment, and they just don't feel like fulfilled.
Yeah, and it is easy to get addicted to just like selling out shows and being like the biggest artist possible. But I think that's a step in the wrong direction where you really need to be trying to build up your sorry uh I can hear that. Let me turn this down. You gotta take care of yourself first, basically,
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
make sure you're ready for that mental challenge of like showing up to a different state and like there's not that many people, because
Yeah, definitely.
that's gonna like put you in a bad state of mind. Once you get back home, you're gonna be like, what am I doing wrong, what's happening? But
Yeah.
you're able to take that mental challenge on better when you focus on yourself, like from the ground up. Like make sure you take care of all these things, so you're good mentally, so that you can show up to an out of state show and maybe there's not like it's not sold out, but maybe there's 30 people and you still crush it, and like, hey, that was worth it. Like I feel good, I know who I am. Like
Yeah.
there's 30
Yeah.
people there, who cares? Like I'm doing me and I'm having the best time ever, as
Yeah.
opposed to like showing up and being like, why is this not good enough? Like, chasing numbers and trying to make your agents happy, trying to make your managers happy. Like take care of yourself first and foremost.
Absolutely. Here, I'm sorry. Let me close the door real quick.
No, you're good. Yeah. You got a puppy? I heard a dog.
Sorry, my roommate just got home. Usually I don't have anybody in this house until like 7 p.m.
No, you're good. Yeah, I
Okay,
heard you had
yeah.
a dog.
Yeah, no, sorry. She's great. When I'm in like work mode, she just sleeps right underneath my studio
Aw.
desk and there's no issues. But the second you have somebody else in the house, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, it's playtime. Okay, it's time to go out, time to go on a walk. But no, that's my little quarantine baby that has mentally been just like wonderful for
Yeah.
me, my
I
roommates,
wanted
my
to get a
boyfriend.
dog so bad.
It's hard when you travel though,
So hard. Yeah, it's so hard.
But back to what you were saying, it's really hard as like an artist, having that team that like you're honestly kind of responsible for, to a
Hmm.
certain extent. And that's why I feel like having that sense of self security and like knowing your worth, even though, the tickets may not have been sold, because everybody starts from ground zero. Like you have to start from ground zero if you're going to, in my opinion, like last more than 2 to 3, 4 years. Like you can just get thrown onto a huge tour, but I don't think that necessarily helps you build like the foundation and like brick blocks that are going to allow you to have a career in this industry that lasts a decade, that lasts 2 decades. And it's like, I'll go and I'll play venues and I have to just tell myself like, hey, this is where you're starting. These are the starting blocks. It's okay that, only 100 tickets were sold. It's okay that X, Y, and Z were sold. But it's like that inner mind battle. And that's why I feel like having a strong supportive team from a management and agent perspective is so fucking important,
Yeah.
because it could like make or break you. And the more that I get intertwined in this industry, the more I understand how important it is and how small of a community it ends up being once you're in that festival circuit. And you know what you said earlier, like that community does get small. You do end up knowing everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what what it might come down to is maybe people get distracted by taking shortcuts because they
Hmm.
want to sell out every show as soon as they go on tour.
Yeah,
That's the goal. They want to sell it out immediately, but it's like
it's unrealistic.
it's unrealistic, and you know, it takes time, and that it you I don't think you should put that pressure on you, but you know, a lot of people will try to put that pressure on you, or you'll put that pressure on yourself, you know, and mentally think, you know, you're not good enough. But yeah, it comes from hard work, and that's I mean, I hate giving that advice, like just work hard, but like it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of struggles, and but once you get past that, you know, you'll feel confident, you'll have that, like you said, rock solid foundation, you know, like nothing can really like get you down,
Hmm.
because you know what your self-worth is. And I think that's one of the most important things, to get down from the beginning so you can take on those challenges.
Absolutely. And I just feel like a lot of people, again, like what you said, like working hard, because it sounds almost too simplistic. It's
Yeah,
almost like, oh, what? Like
it's not
that's a
really good
lie.
advice,
You know,
but
that's shitty advice. But some people don't want to work. They
yeah.
don't want to put in the time. And that hard work, a huge percentage of what falls underneath that concept is just time and like
Hmm.
practice and doing it over and over and over again. And that comes from like DJing, from branding yourself, from working on music and production. And it's like, yeah, if you have an open ended check, maybe you can expedite that process a little bit more, but
Yeah,
you won't last. So it's kind of like identifying if you want this to be a career or you
right.
want this to be a chapter in your life in which you can fulfill what you want to achieve
Yeah,
and then move on to the next thing. And it's like to each their own, but I feel like there's definitely a balance of those two that
yeah.
coexist in this industry.
It's like, do you want to get famous, or do you want to have a career, like a long lasting
Do
career?
you
It's
want to
like,
make money to provide for
yeah,
yourself and provide? Because, you know, you look at these huge agencies and without naming anything, without naming artists, I have friends who are on these agencies and like they're not financially well off. And you would think being associated with a huge agency that represents X, Y, and Z, that caters to all of these properties, you would be making money.
yeah,
But when you realize that from a consumer standpoint, that the management takes a cut, the agents take a cut, you still have to live. You have to pay rent, you have to pay your bills and expenses just like a normal human. And after all that, you know, you still want to be able to live comfortably. And a lot of people, if you take the shortcuts, that's unfeasible. And it's really hard once you
yeah.
get put on a certain platform to go back and do the groundwork.
Yeah, and you're such a good person to have that perspective on, because you are literally doing this right now, and being like it's basically being your own boss, and creating your own revenue by like how you do it with your residencies, your podcast, your uh you teach.
Patreon, that other
Yeah,
shit.
Patreon.
Yeah.
But
It's a
yeah,
grind. Like,
yeah, you're doing as much as you possibly can, because you want to stay financially stable. And a lot of people don't take that approach. They're just they like, you know, want to get the usually the first goal is like, I want to get an agent, I want to get a manager, and then that's how I'll make more money. And it's like, that's not really how it works. You have to be your own boss, and like really put yourself out there, and try to figure out ways to make money, because we're all like entrepreneurs at a certain point. We all start our own LLC, and
mm-hmm.
are trying to like make this a career. And there's so many different ways to make money. It's not just like release bangers and then hopefully, you know, you sell out shows. There's so much more to this industry than that.
Yeah, and like the fact of you being your own boss, you're in control of it. And even though it may seem like, you know, I'm being filtered through my management and my agents and the bookings coming from them and all that stuff, you're their boss. They work for you. They're taking a
Yeah,
percentage of what you make. Like if you don't show up, you are the product. And that's where I feel like, you know, unfortunately, bringing into play how many losses we've seen over the last year due to, you know, mental illness,
hmm,
et cetera. Like, we very easily as artists can lose ourselves if, you know, we don't understand that we're not a product, we're an individual, and we have feelings and we have all of this stuff, because at the end of the day, like, you are a product that is being sold, but you have to be in touch with what you said earlier, your energy. And I feel like me having the podcast, you throwing your own events, having that different faceted side where you're approached more as an individual human instead of a product on stage, is that grounding facet that everybody should try to have someone in their life, whether it's having a second job outside of music or doing something where it's teaching or X, Y, and Z, because you can just get lost in the clouds by being an artist.
And I definitely look up to you with the approach that you're doing, because that's some real shit. Is
No, you're
the
gonna make me tear up, because I was like, Mom, Crizzly's coming on the podcast. And she's like, Crizzly, she's like, you played your first Friday show with him a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, Mom, it's Crizzly. But so I do appreciate you saying that, because
yeah.
there's, and it's the same with you. I'm sure you've been in the position where some days I just kind of just look at the wall and I'm like, fuck, man, like, I hope all this work pays off. Like, I really hope it does. But you
I
just
think it
have to
is.
keep going.
It's already paying off for you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it definitely is. It's hard too, where maybe you can elaborate on this, when I liken someone who has imposter syndrome, and I think a lot of artists do, when you
Oh
like
yeah.
don't feel like you're standing on stage, or I have Crizzly on the podcast, I have fucking Riot 10 on the podcast, and I'm like, damn, like, I'm really fucking talking to these motherfuckers. Like, maybe I shouldn't be here right now. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this,
No,
because
yeah, we all go through that for sure.
so I don't know. Was it very different when you started touring as an artist, or is it really just the same on the back end of the industry and it's just a different time period?
Like same as when I started to now,
Yeah.
or it's. I mean, I feel like it's mentally the same. I feel like one of the biggest things was me just like I started touring at such a, like, not young age. I mean, because some of these people that are touring now are like 16 or 17.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I started when I was like 19, 20, um, constantly like being on tour. I think my first bus tour was with 12 Planet, and I was like 20 years old.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. How
but
was
it,
that?
yeah, that was intense. But it just I don't think anything's really changed since then for me personally. I'm just always pulling up with my MacBook out, like making edits, like working on stuff, and that's what I love to do. But I think the way you approach it, as like like you said, multifaceted, like coming from different angles, like trying to figure it out. That's like how inevitably you're going to be a part of the scene and grow with it. Is you figure out all the different things you can do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And it's like picking something and like becoming good at it, like whether it's throwing parties or producing or having a podcast. And I think it's awesome to understand the concept of multitasking, but also even better to understand that you can't do everything at the same time with 100% effort. So it's
right.
really important to say, okay, like, I'm going to time batch, I'm going to schedule my time to focus on this for the next semester, focus on this for the next quarter of the
Yeah,
year.
that's a huge part of it. That's what I'm starting to figure out better now, which I wasn't. I was basically doing what a lot of people want to do, is just kind of just like going for like viral stuff, or just like trying to be like, like as popular as possible without really focusing on like time management. And that's something that I've learned recently a lot more. And I see you, and I see, like, I look up to you, how you figure that out at such
Thank
like
you.
a young starting point, or like not like an early point in your career. You already
Yeah,
have that down, which is so key. And I'm hoping, like, you I'm sure you're giving that advice to everybody you're coming in contact with your
for sure.
students and everybody.
For sure.
But yeah, that's so important, and I'm so glad that you figured it out. It just makes me so like hopeful for the future of a lot of dance music, that people like you have figured it out. A lot of the people that I look up, or like the younger kids that I look up to now, like they figured it out, and I'm like, and I just reassure them. I'm like, yes, you're doing it right. Just keep doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna ask you a couple questions, because
Go for it. Absolutely.
yeah.
I actually really enjoy when this gets turned around, because we get some good conversation out of it. But yeah, no, please ask away.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, if you could wave a magic wand, how would you change the scene, like from your own
Oh.
standpoint? Like, and it doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. It could be neutral, or it can be negative. Who
So I'm
cares?
gonna
But
I'm gonna counter your magic wand
yes.
and say the biggest thing from afar that I get bothered by and wish did not exist, but it exists in every industry. So
Hmm.
I don't think it's hard because when I talk to established seasoned people like yourself, and then I'm an up and comer, so we do have different perspectives on things where I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to change the wheel. I understand how the back end of the industry works. However, you know what you were just saying, that you're hopeful for the future with people like Aaron, people like myself, so many talented, individuals. I don't understand why there is this aspect of gatekeeping that I feel like I see a lot. But on the other side of that, does the gate disappear once you've put in your time and done enough work?
So
That's
gate,
what I look at.
yeah. So like, yeah. What keeps what do you think is a gatekeeping scenario?
So a gatekeeping scenario would be, per se, all right, so instead of, we see this incredibly talented younger artist who has had some strong releases. They look like they've got some good support. Their branding's on point. Their marketing is, presentable. We know they could push tickets. Let's put them on a support tour. But
Hmm.
why is that lost to, oh well, I have my friend here who, they can just they'll just take the spot and it doesn't matter? Because I feel like that's hindering the progression of this scene. That's how I feel. if
Yeah.
if like the people on the back end, and it's awesome because like you are in that position sometimes with the shows that you throw, where you're technically acting as the role as a talent buyer even though it is a local show.
Yeah.
Why is it always, I guess I'm just going to go to the corporates first? I'm not going to kind of read the room and do my due diligence and work and see who actually people are interested in seeing and who people may go out of the way to see. And is that just the way it's going to be, or do you think if the right people were in those administrative positions, such as talent buyers, such as, event coordinators, that there could be a change? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's all an investment game. You know, these, like you said, the talent buyer is throwing money at this party and hopefully in hopes to make a profit. So I think my way around, because I started out as nothing. I was
Yeah.
literally just like from a small ass town in Texas, like 10,000 people, and I had like no chance at really doing anything unless I like,
Worked your
try
fucking ass off.
yeah, or tried
Yeah.
something. Yeah, and I worked really hard, and that's all I knew was how to work hard. I was pretty much a loner in high school, and I just worked my ass off in my bedroom. But as soon as I got out of the house, I was like, okay, well, who's really like changing the scene? And that's why I said like Disco Donnie is my idol, and that's like why he was the first person that I wanted to approach, because he he is a gatekeeper at some sense. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's the one throwing it and doing it. So like, why not be friends with him? Why not like show that I respect him? Because what happens is people don't really like approach him or really like like connect with him or connect with anybody else in the industry, like the girl who's running hospitality, the transport drivers, like the whole scene behind it. I think people forget that it's a whole industry of like moving parts, and why not be friends with everybody? And that's one of the first things I did. There's such a good local scene in Austin with the DJs and who and I just met everybody by going to
Mm-hmm.
shows. I was a part of the scene, so people I would say I guess they trusted me because they're familiar with me, and I made an effort to really like reach out and be like, hey, how can I help, or like what can I do to help? And at the beginning it was a lot like, hey, can you just open for the show, or like do this, or just play at this show? And I was like, sure, yeah, whatever helps. And then I'm like, what else do you need? And they're like, we want to sell tickets. I'm like, cool, I'm on it, I'm selling tickets. So I became like an actual promoter, and was on the ground like selling everything. And I think that's my technique to get around the gatekeeping. And I think the same approach that you're having with just like you know working multiple facets just to get your name out there more and do as much as you possibly can to get around that gatekeeping is one way to do it. Because if you're just worried about like opening for a big show, I think it's it's going to be really difficult because there's so many other artists that are, or so many other up and coming artists that are gunning for that spot. And yeah, it will end up going to someone who's a friend or a friend of a friend, because they just like have that, you know, face to face connection. And I think everybody should make an effort to do that at some point.
Absolutely. And I love that because, you know, for everyone who's listening, that gives that back end perspective. And it's like me, I even struggle with that to a certain standpoint because, you know, in my mind, it's like, hey, Pasquale's over there. Oh, hey, I know that talent buyer. Like I know the faces, I know the names, but then you have that little voice that goes, oh, they don't want to talk to you right now. They're too busy right now. But if there's a way to handle that approach where you're introducing yourself, or you know, coming up to someone and saying, hey, I respect the hell out of what you do, thank you for doing this, there's a way to do that in a classy manner that does not coexist with you saying, hey man, book me, hey
Right.
man,
Yeah.
here's my USB. And I think the more people can break down, especially up and comers, in their mind that this person doesn't want to talk to you, that person's just another human being, they will be able to do that more. I just feel like from my perspective, when I talk to up and comers, they feel like we're in high school and we have, you know, we have all of the tables already sat and they're already
Right.
full.
Hmm.
And no one, you know, unless you're, which is amazing now because there's so many new labels popping up, so it's like there's new families that are like blooming, that are opening the doors to, you know, invite these new artists in and invite all of these, you know, awesome up and comers to introduce them more into the industry via, you know, Cyclops recordings, via room service, you know, because they're ran
Hmm.
by Subtronics and they're ran by Bear Girls. And there's so many of those now that also help hinder that gatekeeping. So I'm very excited for the future, but I think that's like 2 years ago, Lizzie talking, when I just couldn't for the life of me understand why some people got these bookings and why some
Hmm.
people got put on these tours. But, you know, it's also like time. Like my
It
mental
is. Yeah.
state is in such a different place now than it was 2 years ago. And the things that I used to be resentful of or jealous of don't exist anymore
Right.
in that
That's a
state.
huge thing that like the younger like EDM scene goes through. I see a lot of people trying to rush everything. They're rushing their like friendships, they're rushing their connections, they're rushing like shows because it just takes time. And I think a lot of it comes down to expectations. Like you could walk up to someone, and a lot of people will walk up to me and, you know, expect something from me, expect me to like hand them like a show, be like, oh dude, you should play here right now, like here, get on the decks. But it's like that's not realistic expectations. Like I have to get to know someone, you know, before I
Mm-hmm.
can like really get them on a show, because I don't feel confident like just throwing someone on a show randomly.
No.
I have to like I have to get that face to face connection. So I personally make an effort to like go out and like actually meet all these like up and coming producers, like everybody in the Austin and San Antonio scene. Like I try to meet them and like really get to know them and like help them out. And then once they're ready, I start pitching them to all the local venues, being like, hey, this person's good, this person's good. Like I'm trying to help everybody out, and, you know, at least like accelerate that process. So because otherwise I think those kids that are up and coming are going to be stuck not knowing what to do. and and, you know, you need someone to help you out, you know, along the way. So
Exactly. And like there's not always that person. There's not always you in that city
mhm.
willing to do that. Like I tried to do that at Ritz for a certain standpoint where, you know, it was a very like, hey, we're just gonna bring somebody in who has a fucking fire list. They may be playing YouTube rips and it may be a fucking terrible set, but they brought people through the door. And it was like, okay, how can we reframe our mind to look at these up and comers that are making their own music, they're pushing the grind, let's bring them in and expose them to an already established night and see where we can gauge them from there. And then it's like someone like you comes in and says, okay, we can trust this individual. And that's why I feel like when you're an up and coming artist, everywhere you go, you have to handle yourself professionally. And maybe I'm a bit too serious about it than I should be because I love to have fun too, but there's this very muddy line that runs in our industry where you have the party And then on the other end of it, you have like the paycheck and the business. And
Right.
you, as an up and coming individual, as well as an establishing artist, I always remember when someone's a shit show and doesn't handle themselves,
Yeah, that's important.
properly. But I
Mm.
don't know, what's your aspect on that? Or
Yeah,
I guess
well,
perspective.
I could give you one of the best advice or one of some of the best advice that I got was when you walk in a room, just pretend that everybody just already likes you. And
Yeah,
that helped me out so
that's
much
great. I should do that more.
because people aren't really thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. You know, they're stuck
Hmm.
in their own head. So if you just imagine everybody likes you, even if you can like come up to them and they don't like you and you're just a nice person, they're not going to be mean to you. They're
No.
going to be nice back. They're going to reflect your energy. So it's bringing that energy to a room, just being like everybody's cool. Like let's just make sure everybody's happy and make sure that I'm just you just be nice to everybody and don't expect anything. That's also like
That's
where
huge.
that's where people trip is they expect things to happen or expect someone to do this for them. But I think I have no expectations ever, and I'm always trying to give instead of take. And so if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm a team player. I'm just walking up. I'll say hi to someone to just meet them, just so that they know that they can approach me if they need anything.
Yeah.
Essentially,
That's
but
that's definitely the way to go. And I feel like if you're in, I guess, like, don't be fucking hammered. Like, if you're in the right mind state, I feel like to have that approach where, hey, I'm going to walk in the room, I'm going to have confidence, I'm going to be cool, calm, collected, and I'm going to make sure that everybody has their shit done and I'm going to offer a helping hand. Like, I don't see a lot of people do that. So I feel like that would go further than most interactions or courses of action if you kind of like just show up. And I also feel like being overly prepared is something, again, I'm talking from an upcoming standpoint, not so much an established artist, but I guess this does, it does apply to those touring artists, but they kind of already have it under their belt. Is like, hey, like you should know that you're going to be nervous. You should have that backup USB. You should have your computer with you because you never know what's going to get thrown at you. And my kind of perspective is like, hey, when you step on stage, like 90% of the work should be done and you should be ready to engage with your crowd and like have fun.
yeah, I think you bring so many good points to the table. I think one like one of the things that we're talking about with gatekeeping that I also like to think about, what's helped me like break that mental barrier of like I can't do this because like I'm not allowed to, or like I can't do this because it's not what people expect. I think I got out of that mindset probably during quarantine, or like when the pandemic started. I started realizing that like it we really do create our own reality, and there's no one stopping you from doing that. And once
Mm-hmm.
you break through that and realize that like you can create your own reality, it's a mindset thing at the end of the day. It everything just like started getting a lot easier, and it enabled me to like create something out of nothing. and and a lot of people and a lot of upcoming artists are looking for something that's already established and trying to like not necessarily leech off of it, but they're just trying to like gain something from something that's already there. Whereas I took a step back during quarantine and realized like what got me here was not thinking like that. It was like, let me just throw my own parties. Let me book my own like mini festivals in San Antonio, and let me pack out the venue. Let me be my own promoter. Let me do this because like I was supposed to just be an artist and just like DJ. And it's like, no, I can create this reality for me. I can create the space for me. And but it took a lot of work, and it's a lot of pressure. But it's that getting in that mindset of like like you you can create it. You don't have to wait around for someone to say yes.
And I think that's something that with my kind of generation of artists coming up is a huge hit home point of like, hey, stop waiting around, just make it happen. But it's always harder to take that route than the waiting route, and some people just don't want to do it.
Yeah,
But it's like,
that's
if
the reality. Yeah, for sure.
and it's like if you can find the logistics of it, anything that you can imagine can become a reality, but you have to be realistic in your planning. And I think something that I've gone through too, that every artist goes through, is like, when I have this negative mindset that like, hey, this isn't gonna fucking happen, it's not realistic, it's not X, Y, and Z, it doesn't happen. But when I say, okay, what can I do? Everything in my power to where if it doesn't happen for me, I know I did everything and I worked as hard as I possibly could. And the next time it comes around, I've already done 98% of the work and it's going to be easy to secure. So it's like, this isn't like a one or done kind of industry. It's like, hey, like all of this work in all of these different categories won't go unnoticed and you're not going to lose the work that you've already done, whether it's an official remix or I can't even tell you how many fucking remixes I've submitted. Nope, not good enough. Nope, not good enough. And then it's like when you finally get that one that's good enough, it's the first one. And you go, okay, well, this wouldn't have happened if I didn't get the no's all these times. And you were talking about it earlier in the conversation where you get so many more no's and you fail so many more times than you're going to succeed or be told yeses. But that's like the most important part of journey and I like of your journey and of growing in this industry, because if you never get told no, like you're not going to grow. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's my
that's
perspective.
100%. And I honestly, once I started touring, I didn't get told no enough. I think that really hurt my career because I got to a point and there was just all yeses and I could do
Mm-hmm.
whatever I want. And I think that ultimately didn't really help me out. Like I wish I took a slower route to what got me here, because yeah, I was just getting yes to everything. Like I got immediately booked on the first EDC Vegas. I did like EDC Vegas like 5 years in a row. Like and I had that imposter syndrome. I'm like, why am I here? But it was really just all the hard work that I put in as a kid without even knowing it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a mindset that I had that nobody else had, was just like, look, if you want to do it, like go out there and put in the work. And it's not easy, but
No.
you know what you have to do once you calculate and really think about it. And if you want to give, that it'll all happen a lot faster than searching for something. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I
I
was
feel, oh,
oh,
sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, yeah, I kind of have this like same approach with a lot of the music that I've been playing out too. It's like a lot of people only imagine the songs that they're playing out, like they only really imagine it in one space. And I think a lot of that like is like a mindset thing. Like do these songs work here at like a festival, or do they work here at after hours club? Like there's this really like weird disconnect. And it's I think it's from the mind, where you're interpreting the music like yeah, sorry to get on a different subject, but it's just
Oh,
like
no, no, no. That's fine. Go for it. I'm
what I've been
actually
thinking about.
interested in what you're saying. So, what do you mean by existing in different spaces, like
Like
music?
there I mean, I'll do these weeklies and people will
Mm-hmm.
come up to me and be like, yo, they'll show me new music and you're like, yo, this will go off at Lifted. That's the weekly that I throw.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it's like, okay, you get it now. You like you're interpreting this space as like a place where a certain types of songs will will really hit. And that was like a weird mindset shift that I had during quarantine. It's like, because I wasn't able to leave my house, I was stuck in this room like
Mm-hmm.
listening to music and just having my headphones on, just like jamming music. But I had to like imagine songs at different venues, at different um places, and that really helped me break a barrier in my own head of like what is possible. And that's what helped me get to this weird, just not weird, but like a better spot of like creating my own reality. Was like, okay, I hear these songs, like where can I imagine this being played, and where does the best fit for this, like when does this need to be played, like 10 p.m, 11 p.m, 12 p.m. And like I started like thinking about sets differently, and touring differently. There's like it was just breaking that barrier of like, this is what I should be doing, or like like, or thinking like what, looking at other artists and like just like imitating them in a sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody is coming into the scene like being like, I want to be a festival DJ, I want to be a festival DJ. And so their whole sets are just all festival music and
Bangers, banger,
bangers,
banger,
bangers,
banger.
which
Yeah.
I love too. I love that. That's the best part of like festivals are the best. But I think breaking that barrier of like, you can only play bangers is a real like mindset game changing element to what really helped me like comprehend what this all means. And that brought it back to like the community, like residencies, and like building the scene. It's kind of like interpreting music in a different way, where like that, I think that's why like a lot of the Wook stuff is popping off, because
Oh yeah.
the people who were jamming that and listening to that weren't thinking about bangers and festivals all the time. They were thinking about like, like weird camping like setups, the RV like campgrounds
The
set.
RV at Electric Forest. The
Yeah,
R
like
yeah.
yeah, and that's like a different interpretation of different sounds that can work. And then all of a sudden you see that music on the main stage all of a sudden. And
Oh
I saw
yeah.
I saw that coming, and it's the people that really like can imagine something different but in a new space. And it's really just like interpreting the music in a different way, where it's like there's no rules. It's like what actually works, what is actually going to like hit here. And that really is what helped me get past those moments where I only had dubstep in my crates, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't have enough of like a well-rounded set. Because in the beginning I was just like, I was downloading EDM when it wasn't even a thing and no one knew what it was, and I was interpreting it at like weddings. I used to play weddings, and
Oh my gosh, okay.
and birthday parties when I was like 16 and 17.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so but it was that mindset ability that I was able to like uh transport these weird electronic songs into a wedding somehow. But like I had this perspective of like, if I just do this and then like connect it with a popular song, obviously, like make an edit, but then bring it back to here, it's like, okay, it'll work. But I had to like, break that barrier in my head that was like the thoughts or like the voice in the back of my head. It's like, you can't do that. It's like, no, I can. I have to just like really like, imagine it and like make it a reality, basically.
Anything's possible when you take the time to do it. And that's where I think I love that I've been able to become a seasoned DJ, because I think a lot of producers who don't, it's great in our industry. I definitely do think, production is first, but DJing is a respected art and it is a different skill set. I see so many producers that I love their music, and I don't really vibe to their sets. And I know a lot of fans and a lot of, consumers of music can resonate with that, but it's really awesome to when you hear something and then you think of to a song in the 80s or you think to a song in the 90s and you're like, hey, like I can think it, like I can hear it, but you just have to have the time allocated to have like this well thought out idea and be able to like bring that to life. And that just comes with like you not doing it on the fly, like you sitting down at your desk and like fucking figuring that out, or in the green room and figuring it out before it's executed, because you can execute anything well if you have like enough time to do it properly. So I don't know. That's just that definitely is something where before having the residency, I would not be able to understand or resonate, but it's absolutely that space. But I still get to the point where, if we're at an after party, we're at other stuff, and I've got my USB, it's just kind of like, hey, like this is not a dubstep space, but instead like reformulating your mind and your perspective to say, okay, so out of what you have, what can you do to make it work here in this space, in this atmosphere? And that's a totally different approach that I don't think a lot of people have, but it's that's super dope.
Yeah, it's that's what I personally find a passion in. And yeah, I am a DJ, and we could talk about being a DJ producer, like what you should and shouldn't do. But it like I said in the beginning, it really doesn't matter. It's up
It
to
doesn't matter.
do whatever you want, do whatever makes you excited to like show up. Obviously, every day. That's what you're supposed to do. And I personally enjoy being a DJ. I like figuring out crowds, figuring out new music that hasn't been tested out before, and like really
Yes.
testing it out and seeing if it works. And because if it's a good song, it'll work. And I think yeah, there's so much good music out there. We should be like,
So much.
I love just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, and figuring out what people are into. Because once I figure out something that sticks that someone else hasn't been trying, it's like boom, game on. Let's keep like trying something like this similar, and try to create something new out of it. And that's where I kind of created like a lane with dubstep and like hip hop
Mm-hmm.
stuff, because not a lot of people were doing it in the beginning. There's people doing it for sure. I wasn't the only one or the first one, but it wasn't like just like it didn't exist before. So I would try some of these hip hop edits and dubstep edits, and they just kept sticking. And I'm like, I like this type. I like hip hop. I like dubstep. Let's keep doing it. And then I just kept doing it.
And you have to do what you like too, because that's the only way to like experiment with songs or with different, IDs, and see if they work or not by just trying it. Like, just go out on a whim and try it, because if it doesn't work and you're in the middle of a set, 30 seconds later you'll be on to something else. It's not the fucking end of the world. And I think the like more important aspect of that though is you took your two favorite influences and you combined them. And I think a lot of people get wrapped up in like what's hot or what's trending or how I'm
Right.
supposed to sound or how I'm supposed to play. And the most far you'll get is by doing what makes you happy and finding those niche little sounds and like, just different subgenres that work together. And that's what I loved about quarantine, because I feel like what you just kind of talked about with that Wakan stuff, the Wookiee stuff kind of coming to the forefront, is that we got all of these different subgenres, whether it was the deep stuff or the down tempo or the melodic rhythm or color bass, the stuff that wasn't popping off pre-COVID now was very listenable music, not in a club setting, not in a festival setting. And it makes me excited for when everything gets fully ramped up again to see what kind of music is going to hit the stages, because I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit different,
Yeah, I
you
think it's gonna
know?
be different for sure. I did a complete 180 and I'm into house now and I play house a
Yes.
lot.
Well, you do that on your stream too, right? You throw house parties?
Yeah, yeah. But for my weeklies, I started playing at like a bottle service club downtown.
Oh, okay.
And you know how you're saying you played house at the Ritz. It's like
Mhm.
the
Oh, yeah.
sometimes that's just what people want. Like it's like kind of the lowest common denominator. But I, figured out a way to finesse my own style into it and make it my own thing. Because I wasn't a house DJ or a house artist
Mhm.
before quarantine. But after it's like, oh, I'm like knee deep in this now and I'm getting my feet wet for sure, but I love it. I think I just love music, and it took me a second to like step back and realize like I'm not just a dubstep touring act. I need to stop trying to do that because everybody's wants that and expects that from me. I should, and I had to like really like break that barrier and be like, no, I want to just play music. And it took me like throwing a lot of stuff at the walls until something stuck, to figure out that I like house, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't have figured that out if I hadn't tried like 100 different other things to see what actually stuck. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's that's one positive thing about quarantine for sure, just
Yeah.
experimenting.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean it's scary too, because we're in an industry where your product, your artist is sold in a box, and it's scary watching. I always like reference the Visceral project on Getter's project on like this
Mhm.
podcast, is like that like artist sacrifice that like took the heat because people were not receptive to the evolution of his project. And I think post Visceral, post that just like epic failure from a consumer standpoint, it's a bit more widely accepted. And like I take Blaze as like a good example of someone, even though it is a different project, it's still
Mhm.
him, and he's able to sell, okay, hey, I'm doing bass, hey, I'm doing house, and there is that happy middle ground. And it's like, for someone as established as you, who has that following, even if you lose, let's say you lose 10% of your fan base, like, the fans like you because of who you are and what you've done in your past. And I think the biggest thing is, not everyone is going to like everything, but that doesn't mean they're not going to like the next thing, and they're not going to like the thing after that. So it's like you have to do what makes you happy at the current time.
Yeah.
And I think it's so boring when an artist puts out 4 albums over the course of 5 years that sound exactly the same. That's not interesting. So you want to see that evolution. And I think from a consumer standpoint, people are finally starting to get on board with, like, hey, these artists, whether you see it or not, are doing production for video games. They're doing ghost production. They're doing production in hip hop. And like, I look at like Blunt's doing the shit with Taylor Gang and stuff. And it's like, that's what
Mhm.
everybody should be doing, because we have such a dope skill set that just doing bass music is like a disservice to
Yeah.
our abilities within like the DAW and within like our musical like headspace.
Yeah, if you really love music, you will expand on it, and
Mm-hmm.
it and I think, yeah, you are supposed to make, like you are supposed to have your genre when you create like a package, like an artist package, and you are supposed to do this, and people crush it in that element. But yeah, there's this new wave coming for sure of just like different sounds and different approaches. And yeah, I'm definitely excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at, the younger artists like more Kismet, like, so many guys who are 15, 16,
Yeah.
17, 18. And what's amazing is I feel like they had the opportunity to get into the DAW before they knew what other people were doing. And
Hmm.
what they knew, before they knew, oh, like that's not how I should be doing it. That's
Yeah,
not
no,
this.
they start so fresh that they don't have
Yes.
any expectations, and
Yep.
that's awesome, and that's like really where it like a lot of creativity comes from, is just breaking those expectations, not doing the norm,
Mhm.
experimenting and trying new things. But yeah, what was I gonna say? I had something to add to that. I'm really ADD sometimes.
Oh no, I am too. I'll literally Akira will move and I'll look at Akira and I'll be like, "Fuck, what was I gonna say?" If you remember, just tell me and we'll go back to it.
Yeah,
But it's quarantine definitely put a switch up a little bit on this industry, and I don't think we're necessarily going to see it reflected in the lineups we see this year through like the end of the year. Obviously people don't seem to understand this, but most festivals are kind of honoring what they had for 2020.
yeah.
Everybody's still getting the same offers, but I think going into summer of next year, 2020, 22, it'll be really, really dope to see the newer artists that you really saw come out of this, you know, period of time grinding and just people who have really, not that they popped out of nowhere. I'm sure they've been making music for 5 to 10 years, but they finally got that platform to share their music on because everyone was just staring at their phones. Like, it's going to be really cool to see those artists translate into, where all the other headliners are sitting. And I really do believe that's going to happen. It'll happen sooner or later.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, I think I remembered.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, no, you're
Yeah,
good.
it's just something that gets me excited. I think like how I was talking about before, building the community,
Hmm.
um, and like playing, experimenting with music. I think one of the biggest joys I get out of doing this is playing to a crowd that doesn't listen to this music. And I think a lot of upcoming artists are really trying to get in front of people who already like dubstep or already like, a certain genre. But I get a huge kick out of playing like, like maybe a frat party
Hmm.
or like a wedding or like just random gigs, or I'll set up outside of a mall and just like blast music and and try to like just
That's
be like
amazing.
people's like, or this whole summer I played at the park in Austin at
No way. That's
yeah,
dope.
it's like a giant park where they throw ACL at, and just like renegade, like me and my homies set up speakers and played music till like the sun went down, and it was always a vibe. And that's where I would mostly play house, and I had
Yeah.
to like download and learn a lot of house and figure out like, oh, what's going to work at the park. And then all of a sudden I ended up with this playlist of just like heaters of all that
Heaters.
that would go off at the park, but they're not dubstep, they're not like festival bangers, they're just like just great tunes to hear at the park. And it was the excitement of playing to a new crowd, and like not just like the same scene, that really got me excited. Like I could invite my friends that don't normally listen to EDM. I'm like, hey, just come to the park, I'm going to be DJing. And they're like, okay, cool. And then they're experiencing like this type of dance music for the first time. I'm experiencing like playing out in a park for the first time, and just enjoying the vibes. Like it my goal is like, yeah, like I said before, is to convince people who haven't listened to this music to like it.
Yeah.
And I get a huge kick out of it. And I don't think enough people are really approaching it from that angle.
People
They're
are
all,
not at all whatsoever.
yeah, and I think that's how you build the scene. That's how you
Hmm.
get more people at festivals. That's how you get more people at shows, is converting those people who don't normally listen to it into liking it. And at the same time, it's like a two for one. I get them into EDM, and also I'm the first one to get them into EDM, and they really appreciate that. And they thank me. They're like, oh, I never really started listening to this until I heard you play it out, or like figure out a way to, make me like it. They don't say that, but that's what I end up doing, is like I figure out a way to get them to enjoy this type of music that I love and that this whole scene loves. And I'm like, yeah, there's a whole scene for it. come check it out on Fridays where I play.
And that's how they become a raver.
Yeah,
Long story short, end of
yeah.
story. But it's also a lot of things. Like, there's a kind of like an analogy for that. There's a lot of things that I tell to my students when, they're like, hey, like, I just get burnt out. Like, I get burnt out doing the same thing. I get burnt out, trying to learn how to sound design and trying to learn how to do this and working on edits. But it's like you going to the park and going out of your comfort zone and doing something completely new. That's still you building on yourself and building your skill set. So,
Right, exactly.
it's like when I tell my students and they say, I just can't produce right now. I'm not in the mindset for it. I'm like, okay, cool. That's fucking awesome. Don't force yourself to do anything because you're just wasting time. Instead of that, go find some awesome new tunes. Post on Twitter, say, I want to hear IDs. Fucking listen to other people's music, make some dope edits. Like, go and play a house music set because it's all building on your experience within this genre,
Yeah,
within this industry, I guess, per se.
yeah, and obviously you've done that during quarantine. You've reached out and tried different areas to really like grow your brand.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. You gotta go out there and kind of, like I said, create your own reality, create your own vision, and experiment. And yeah, you have to fail a few times, but it's
Oh
worth
yeah.
it.
But it's like without the multitude of failures, like something will eventually stick, whether it's the podcast, whether it's throwing events, whether it's a banging EP. If you just keep pushing at it and trying new things, and like I don't know if you have anything equivalent to this, but I've got like a fucking notebook. Again, I'm a girl, but like I like write everything down and shit. But I like write stupid ideas for merchandise, stupid ideas for songs. But out of all of those ideas, you may have like 5 or 6 where you're like, damn, that actually would go the fuck off. Like, that
Yeah,
would do really well. And that's what it starts with. Like, you can't be someone, whether you're up and coming or established, and just think, yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is going to be the most successful thing I ever do, and it's going to make me a superstar. It
right. Yeah,
doesn't work
it
like
doesn't
that,
work like that at all. Yeah, and yeah, you obviously have a great background on figuring that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Wait, can I ask you some more questions?
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. The last question, yes, that's like 40 minutes ago. Go for it.
Yeah, it's all good. I don't.
No, it's good.
We're just vibing, jamming.
Yes, no, I love it.
I was gonna ask if you could give advice to younger women in the scene. What would you tell them? And
Oof.
what also a second part of that is what advice should they ignore?
Oh, okay. All right.
No pressure.
So I think being a woman in this industry gives you a large window of opportunity that should be approached with that should be approached with a well thought out plan. And I think the biggest thing that we have now that we didn't necessarily have 4 years ago when I started doing this is a larger group of females in which we act as a community, and we
Hmm.
kind of have that, we have a great Discord, we have the girl gang stuff, shout out Jeannie. Like, there's other women that are not just the top women, because when I started I was like, okay, like I know maybe one girl in New York and one girl in LA, but then I know Allison, Wonderland, Rez, and
Yeah.
like Nora and Pure. And that was it. And we based the way that we approached our industry blindly. And for that, I think a lot of us went through things that we didn't necessarily have to go through, but also, was part of our journey and how we approach things now. First off, I think that there are enough wonderful women who are incredibly talented girls who are making music. Do not think that, like, it's there. This has been on Twitter all over, obviously, since the Say My Name shit happened. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about it. I think awesome things come from collaboration. I wish our industry was more open to faceted collaborations, because I think that's how you make hits. I think if you look at any Grammy nominated winning album, you have multiple co-writers and multiple producers, X, Y, and Z. However, I get that our industry is a little bit different, but I think you need to put the time in to make your own music if you do want to be a producer. Like
Mm.
I that's just my opinion, because that's the approach that I did take. And I think as a woman now, if you're thinking about getting into the scene or are newly into the scene, it's a lot different than it was a few years ago where you were
Yeah,
a dime a
it is.
dozen woman.
That's why I'm asking, because it's changed a lot.
It's
Because
changed.
there's a
It's
huge girl
changed.
gang movement.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
amazing, and it's amazing, and it's like, what I love is when I found this, I used to get so frustrated because I would see these other women and I was like, I know they're not making their own music. Like, why is this happening? Like, I don't understand. And then, you know, I sought out girl gang and I sought out all of these other girls, and I was like, okay, like all these girls make their own music. Like, this is dope. Like, this is like the future of women. And I think that these women bring awesome things to the table that hopefully will get recognized. And again, like, I really do, I get it. At the end of the day, I'm not someone who's going to sit here and say, oh, like, fuck you guys for not having women, fuck you guys for not having X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to be like a feminist in that aspect, but I also do think that there are a lot of women who are holding their own, who do deserve the chance to be brought on tour, put on a lineup, X, Y, and Z. And we do need, whether that's women on the other side of the industry acting as talent buyers, acting as artist managers, agents, like bringing them in. Or, you know, I look now, and while I've had terrible, you know, just situations with males in the past, I also know a male for every male who's treated me like shit. I know a male who's fighting for women to be in the industry. So there are both sides of it. And I think as a woman, you right off the bat don't feel like you belong. You know, it's just how it is. You're working
Yeah.
in a male dominated industry.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
go and,
super male dominated.
you know, if you go to an engineer who's working in a biochemical lab, she'll say the same thing. She'll say, I'm working in a male dominated industry. It definitely happens in different fields. However, you know, again, 4 years ago, me would have a lot different answer now. So it does have to do with time and the work you put in. It's hard because you sometimes feel like, okay, well, I'm a woman and I'm getting these opportunities that maybe I don't deserve yet because I'm a woman. And then you have these individuals who, whether they give it to you because of your looks, whether they give it to you because they think you'll owe them a favor down the road, you have to think of your actions and be, I guess, sound with them, and don't let other people think that you owe them things or push you around.
Yeah, and that's
And
kind of that's what I said earlier about
you know,
the expectations of like
yeah.
you walking up and expecting something from someone is
Yes. And I've seen it on both sides. I've seen a guy give an opportunity to a girl for down the line them thinking, "Oh, okay, like, you know, we're on a fucking podcast, whatever. You need to sleep with me now. You need to do this now." And then I've also seen girls walk in and say, "Oh, well, I'm a fucking hot ass girl, so you'll be booking me." No, like, both sides don't work. You know, at the end, and I think at the end of the day, how you gain respect as a woman is if you don't think of yourself per se as a woman. I'm someone who, like, yeah, I think that if you want to embrace your sexuality and fucking go for it, claps off to you, empower, like, go for it. Like, you want to fucking get up there and be naked, like, do it. That's just not the approach I take, but I don't have anything against women who take that
yeah.
approach, because at the end of the day, like, sex does sell. Like, there is an opportunistic point of being a woman in this industry where if you do hold yourself to a certain appearance, like, yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna,
same with guys.
you
Same with
know,
guys too.
it's the same with guys. Absolutely. I mean, you know, I take the big room DJs as a great kind
Yeah.
of example. You look at the Hardwells, you look at the Tiestos. Those are all nice guys to look at, you know? And it's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling on, but I'm so torn when it comes to this, because I'm just someone who, I've seen all of these different girls take these different approaches,
Mhm.
and I'm an individual where it's like, yeah, I fucking go to the gym. Like, I'm happy with how I look. I'm not scared to be like, hey, like, I feel confident. 4 years ago, I hated it. You know, I didn't feel comfortable in my own body, X, Y, and Z. But I also, when I'm in the studio and I'm working and I'm with a bunch of guys or whatever, like, I'm not a girl. Like, I think, okay, like, you need to be better than all these guys for them to take you seriously.
Yeah, I love that.
And,
And
you know,
I think to bring it back around to how you're saying like one of the points that you made that I think also applies to both sides of the genders is having that like that community where you can like talk about these things and like
Yeah,
really break it down and then grow from it. And I think that's something that I learned during quarantine was I had like my two best friends with me during this whole thing, and we talk like 2 hours a day every day
that's great.
to both of them, and having them on my side um like helped me break through so many like barriers in my own head. And I'm sure
Mhm.
that's what the girl gang and the girl community does for each other, and that's
Yes.
what you should, I think would you say like that's one of the important things that you would give advice to another younger female producer is like find your like friends in the
Find
industry
your
that
support group because
yeah
it's still small enough where like the majority of producers I know are a part of this group. And I'm so glad that it's growing. I'm so glad that I can count on more than two hands the amount of girls that I'm seeing on lineups and the amount of girls that I'm seeing on shows. But there is that disconnect and there is that, I think, hindrance and jealousy from a certain standpoint from these girls who are working extremely hard at what they're doing and they're perfecting their craft and they're putting their head down and they're working. And then you have that inner battle of like, hey, am I supposed to be like showing skin? Am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing that? Should I be paying more attention to the press photos I'm taking? And these are all these discussions that I see in our group every day. And it's that inner battle of, I think the first thing that it happens with is the recognition from the back end of the industry saying, okay, I'm going to close my eyes. And if you're good, you're good. But I get that that's not how the industry works. You know what I'm saying? Like you are
mhm,
selling a package, you are selling a brand, but that's how I wish it worked.
yeah
I wish, people were booked for, the parts of the pie because unfortunately in the industry that we're in now, music isn't the only thing that's going to get you booked. You
yeah
have to have the branding, you have to have the social media presence, you have to have that left wing thing that's you're a writer for a blog, you started Girl Gang, you have a podcast, you have a radio show. All of those things matter. Um, but I do think it comes with the back end of like, hey, we're not just going to book this girl because she's on this agency and X, Y, and Z. Like, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to listen to this music and we're going to look at the presentation and maybe even look at their ticket sales other places and book them off of that,
mhm,
not just off of how they look. But
yeah
it's like contradicting because that's not how our industry works. So
yeah
those are like the battle in my mind that I have.
it sounds like you've broken it down, with in a matter
Oh,
of time in your
over and
career.
over again.
It,
Yeah.
but it feels like you've broken that barrier though, or it sounds like
Yeah.
you figured it out because you're explaining it to me like what you would think, but you're at the same time I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit for how much work you've put in and like what
See, but
got you to
that's
that
the
point.
imposter syndrome. That's the
Right.
like, hey, you still haven't worked hard enough. You still have so much further to go. And, I talk to my mom and like my boyfriend all the time and stuff. And I'm sure you can resonate with it at this standpoint where I have to enjoy the things that I've accomplished, but it's also that work ethic and drive that I see in a lot of successful artists that they consistently have until they reach this point, but then they think they can go so much further than the point they've always wanted to reach. And like, that's what's going to keep me going forward. But before we like continue on, there's so much comparison because there are still very few girls compared to guys in this industry per se, where I think at the end of the day, you just have to come to terms with yourself. And oh, look, you hear my
Mhm.
little Akira? She's like a little wolf. She's
Oh,
just like, "Hi, hello, I'm here."
pay attention to me.
I know. Pay attention to me, please, mom. At the end of the day, like you just have to worry about yourself. And I think that was something that I was unable to do until quarantine, where like don't worry about why the fuck this girl was put on this tour, why this girl had this happen to her. Oh, she's ghost produced for. I don't understand why people like her. Like, just throw that all out the window and pay attention to what you're doing because then you're not going to waste the time you were thinking about those other girls and you're going to be focusing that energy into what you love to do. And before it, you're going to be where you want to be at.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that's my hit at home point because there's multiple different phases throughout the last 4 years where I've gone through, and so much of it has been jealousy and resentment and why not me. And when I was able to move past that and say, okay, like, why you, like, what are you gonna do to bring this to the table, and what are you gonna do that you love more than anything, where it's not gonna matter who pays attention to you or who books you, because you're gonna show people via the internet, via your shows, what you're all about, and you're building bricks of stone. And I think that's the way to do it, because you're never going to go backwards if you can just focus on yourself moving forwards.
Yeah, it sounds like you built the foundation for,
Yeah.
like, you took a step back, you figured out, like, oh, none of that matters. It matters,
Mhm.
like, this is what I can control. This is
Yes.
what I can do. And then, you just start working your ass off for it. And that's really the key to
Yeah.
it, is taking a step back and not worrying about what other people are doing. And
Whether you're a girl or a guy.
yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the work ethic and the, like, drive. That's what everybody in this industry has. We're all super driven, and we all don't want to work a 9 to 5. We'll work our ass off more than most people to be here, because it's worth it for us. And yeah, it sounds like you figured that part out, and you're at this point now where you keep doing that, you keep hitting it, and there's no way you can't be successful. I mean, you're already successful, but there's no
I
way
appreciate
this
it. Yeah.
isn't your career. Like, this is a
Yeah.
career now. You're doing it. Like,
And I never would have. I think the reason why I go through that whole entire kind of elaboration on being a woman is because every single girl who I've talked to, for the most part, has gone through the same exact thoughts.
yeah,
But that last kind of chapter where you finally realize that even though when you get tagged, you're tagged amongst all these other women, and all the women blend together, and you're put in this one like cesspool of girls, like, it doesn't matter. You just have to keep doing what you're doing and pushing forward. And as long as you're putting the work in and you have the right intentions, like, that shit will happen. And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you
I think
know,
your intentions with the podcast alone are not to, like, really do anything besides, like, grow the scene or grow the
yeah.
community,
And
and
I
that's
like
the
having
point.
unfiltered conversations,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, so there's a greater existence to what you're doing already, and it didn't come from a spot of, like, jealousy or thinking about what other people are doing. You're like, what can
Mhm.
I do to give? And that's what I was talking about earlier, is you walk into these rooms, and a lot of people, younger kids, or just people who don't get it, are walking in these rooms expecting things to be not handed to them, but, like, like, just because you're in the same room as someone who's doing something awesome, like, I mean, what can you give to them? Like, what can you do to help them out, and not get anything back in return? Because that's not the point. It's not about, like, getting something back in return. It's about what can you give, and like, you don't care about getting anything back, essentially.
Well, that's the furthest. That is what's going to push you the furthest, especially as an up and comer, is like, be thankful for anything that happens to you and don't expect anything. Like that's where the biggest letdowns are, I think, where I see amongst my colleagues, is when you are expecting something and you're told this and you're told that. But like, in this industry, like, words don't mean a lot when it comes out of somebody who's had a few drinks in a green room. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
And the more that you can kind of just offer what you can, and be as real with yourself as you possibly can, I think the better it's gonna be for you and your project, down the road.
yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like you figured that out. I was gonna ask another question.
Yes, I love this. Crizzly is officially turning the podcast around. Crizzly is the host.
No, I'm sure. I mean, you have a lot of things to offer for the, like I said, the girl community. I guess
Well, I
I guess
appreciate that.
I'm keeping it on girl, but like you said, it really doesn't matter either way. This can apply to guys too.
Yeah, no. Oh, it definitely can apply to guys. But no, I appreciate the focus on the female, because it is something that needs to be talked about. And again, it's like, on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram and Discord and whatever the hell you want to, preach on, we're in this time that it's hard to elaborate subtext via a text-based platform. So hearing us talk
Yeah, definitely.
unfiltered without some idiot coming in to say their 2 cents is great, because now people can just take it for what it is, and we're entitled to our own opinions just like every other fucking person on the planet. And you know, it's okay if people don't agree with you. Like, that's what fucks me up now, is like, you have to fit in this bubble of thought, and you're not
Yeah.
allowed to have these other thoughts, or we're gonna come for your throat. And
Yeah.
that's why, like, no, I'm not outlandish. No, I'm not like, no, I don't fucking like Trump. I'm glad he's out of office. But at the same time, like, I don't like talking about my opinions on Twitter,
Yeah,
because
I gave up using Twitter for that
yeah,
exact
I don't want to
reason.
deal with it. It's not worth my time or my energy to go back and forth with someone who I've never met in person.
Yeah, plus you figured it out. You're literally crushing it. And what does anybody on the internet have to really,
It doesn't
sway?
matter what they say. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I always think about Joe Rogan, and Joe, who's in Texas now.
Hell
Everyone's in
yeah.
fucking Texas.
That's my guy.
Yes, yes. He's always like, I don't do social media. Like, I don't read the comments. And while I think there's something that is to offer in comments, especially as an artist, he's not per se an artist, like where we read how people are receiving our art. I think that's important to take into perspective. But I really like the aspect that he has, where it's like, what are these people bringing to the table to your life? How are these people affecting your personal life? Are you going to dinner with them? Are you going to the beach with them? No. They're entitled to their own opinion, like I am mine. So let me say what I want to say, and you guys can offer your 2 cents, but don't think that's going to change me and change my trajectory point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one reason why I stopped really getting on Twitter as much, because I just didn't want to get into those arguments, because I know what I need to be doing. I know
Mm-hmm.
what hard work looks like. I know what um I want to do and what I love to do. But at the same time, as an artist, you have to use socials as a way to, get yourself out there.
Yeah.
So it's I guess profitable to be, outlandish, like you were saying, so sometimes that works for some people, but I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy. I think it's cool to have the hot takes, and it is part of people's brands sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just hard to read. It's hard to read on anything if it's like really somebody's personal opinion. And again, that's why, like, I love having conversations, and that started in the green room at Ritz, when I would meet people like yourself, I would meet
Yeah.
other artists, and I finally felt not uncomfortable to speak with them and have a, transparent conversation, because you're just a human like me. And then when we went into quarantine, I was like, I'm fucking going crazy over here not talking to people, because I don't really have that many, like, I have friends and like acquaintances, but I just kind of keep to myself for the most part. I have like,
Oh, me too. I always keep to
no.
myself.
So I have close friends out of music that I think are great, because it grounds me, because you can get lost in this industry. Like,
Yeah.
you can get fucking just boosted into another dimension. So like, those are the people who I kind of hang out with out of music. But I wanted to talk about music, and I didn't feel like I love Mr. Bill's podcast. Like, Cymatics had a podcast they were doing for a while, but it was in person, and then they stopped when COVID started. Like, I love Willie Joy, I love In the Jaw, but I didn't really hear anyone doing very transparent conversations with other artists, just to like shoot the shit. And like Taboo does them too, and like he's probably most comparable, but there can always be more. There's so many fucking artists out there. Like, get as many people on as you can, because everyone brings a unique take to the story. And I think artists right now just want a platform where they can talk and not be canceled for it.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job by bringing that platform,
Thank you.
obviously.
Thank you,
And
thank you, thank you.
it's something I wish I could do, but it's just something I haven't put the time into. I put a lot of time into streaming during quarantine.
Did you
Um,
like that? Like, did you find kind of a cool sense of connection? The people who I've talked to on
oh
the
yeah,
podcast, streaming wise, they said that was their like show, when they could connect with other people
yeah.
via the internet and DJ
Well,
sets.
that's what it's about. Like I said, community. Like
Mhm.
the Discord community is so fucking sick. With like,
Discord is sick.
yeah, it's such a cool community. The Twitch community in general is like, it's a place where I like felt at home. I felt like I was like actually connecting with people, and that's when social media really is at its best, is when it connects people that are like-minded and like really just want to like express their love for like certain certain things, whether it's music or any other type of hobbies. But
And I think
yeah,
Discord and Twitch are the best for that
that's
because,
really good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's and like yeah, I think it made me realize too. I think while I was doing that, I was like, oh, this is about community, and that's why I was like, I need to start doing my weeklies again as soon as I can, because like what I did on the Twitch stream was build a community and like build a bunch of friends and like close connections and like brought people together that didn't know each other. And that's exactly what we do every time we throw a show, every time we play a festival. That's what festivals are. They're giant community building experiments where you're at home all week, you're working your 9 to 5, and you just want to connect with another human being. And like a festival is like one of the greatest experiences on this planet to really like connect with other humans. And that's when I was like, oh shit, that's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to like get famous or like other reasons. It's like I was an only child growing up, and like I was a loner, and festivals were like my first time to really like go out and socialize and like just
Yep.
like be myself and be the weirdo that I am.
That's
But
what made me
yeah,
fall in love with EDM was festivals because
yeah.
I went to like I think I went to like two raves, like two club shows before my first festival, which was Sunset Music Festival here in Tampa, the year I graduated high school. And I was like, this is fine. Like I was a fucking metalhead, so I was like, this is kind of weird. I was like, this is like, eh. And then I went to a festival, and I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah,
Like
that's usually where
I
people
get
that's
it
usually where
now.
people click.
Yes.
They go to a festival and they're like, "Oh, I see." But then we go back to these shows and everybody's still playing festival music and it doesn't really like hit the same way. They're not interpreting it the same way. That's why I make a difference in my crates now. Like there's like festival bangers and then there's like music that works good at a club or like the Ritz, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's music that works at the park.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
like to there's different times and places for each thing, and that's how you get people to like really comprehend what is the music they're hearing. And yeah, the festival music is obviously the best experience um
Yes.
to experience festival music, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 for
But yeah,
sure.
you experienced Sunset.
Yeah, Sunset was the first one, and then everybody always said I ruined it for myself because shortly after Sunset, I went alone to Electric Forest. So Electric
Ooh,
Forest was my first festival like experience,
that's the best one too.
and it was amazing because they have like bands and stuff too, so it's kind of I've never gone to Bonnaroo, which is really where I would like to go next. I love the multi-genre
Right.
festivals.
Yeah, because you get to
So
learn new things
yes.
and experience new music, and
Yeah.
that's the whole
Like I
point.
love the jam bands, and then I love the forest sets where you got like the Charles the First and the Mr. Carmax, and then you have like your traditional bangers like
Yeah.
Skrillex and Odessa and like all of those people where it was a very then I was like, all right, this is fucking sick. And I was in college at the time, or I was about to go to college, and I went to college, and I was like, I had played in a band for so long, and I had done all like other audio engineering shit like through high school, and I was like, no, like this just isn't for me. Like, how can I do this? And
Yeah.
then, I removed myself from that situation and said, all right, like you need to, plan the steps to get where you want to go. And I had never intended on being like a DJ or like a producer. I wanted to, like, I went to school for Foley sound and then audio
Oh, nice.
engineering,
That's
like
awesome.
which is like
Oh,
mixing
I
and
wish I did that.
mastering. And then my friend one day was like, yo, like, do you want to come and DJ? And I was like, I don't really know how to DJ. And then I DJ'd like one or two events, and then the people at the Ritz were like, yo, we saw you were in Orlando. Do you want to come in and like try out DJing here? And I was like, all right, this is lit. Cause that's the club I went to, when I was in high school. Like,
Yeah.
so, and I was 18. So I was like, this is cool. This is cool. And then, we're here.
Did you ever go to Warp Tour?
Yeah. So 13 years old, mother in the back, Bring Me the Horizon, Wall of Death,
Yes.
raining. I don't know if you've ever been. Have you ever been to St. Pete?
Yeah, I did Warp
Okay.
Tour 2013, 2014.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So then I was there. I'm
Yeah.
sure I remember. Okay. So I remember when Warp Tour started bringing in electronic acts. You guys were on that like small stage
Yep.
facing the water, and it was like the Journey stage, or it was like something like that. I'm not
I
sure.
specifically remember playing Versace by Drake and Migos.
Yes. Yes. And I
It was,
remember
like,
walking
huge.
by, and I was like, wow, there's like EDM here. And I remember someone behind me saying, EDM is the next wave. And I'm like, fuck no, it isn't. What are you talking about? And then look now, Warped Tour is gone. Raves are like
Rip.
insane. Rip. And that location on Vinoy Park on the water
Yeah.
was one of the like just amazing. Like,
Honestly, yeah. Now that I think about it, that's probably my favorite Warped Tour spot, just
because they're
because it's on
usually
the
in
water.
parking lots, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was right next to the beachfront, so it was
Very
beautiful.
cool. Yeah, no, that was like 13 to 17, 18 every year, Warp Tour, because that was, my favorite bands. You got to see everybody at one stop. And
Bring Me the Horizon crushed it. That was such a good set.
oh yeah. Oh my gosh. And I love them now. And it's like you take them, I look at all these other genres and I'm like, look at how all of these artists evolve and mature in their sound. Because now you look at Bring Me the Horizon and they're like, they're like alternative music. They're radio play music.
I think of
And
them as K-pop now.
yeah, they literally have like K-pop influences, like alt rock, but back then it was like diamonds aren't forever, die
Mhm.
in a ditch, like fucking kill each other, go.
Yeah.
And like circle pits and mosh pits and wall of death. I just remember I had like a cutoff t-shirt. My mom was texting me. I was on a date with I was on my first date ever with this boy at Warped Tour. And he was like, we're gonna do the wall of death. And I was like,
Ooh.
what? And he's like, put your phone in my bag. I'm like, okay. And he's like, put your hair up. I'm like, all right. He's like, ready, let's go. And it started pouring and it was like a wall
Ooh.
of death and it was great. And then I was like, yeah, like I want to do music forever. Like this is lit.
Yeah, exactly. And
You
yeah,
know?
it's those experiences that really like throw you headfirst into realizing that this is what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so excited festivals are coming back. I
Oh,
think it's a
it's a
community and it's exciting
yes.
experience with others, and it's just going to be so awesome when they're finally back, because it's what we're missing. It's why the scene is like
So
stagnant right
toxic. It's why it's so toxic is because like
now.
we
Yeah.
don't understand, even as artists too. Like my boyfriend, like midsummer last year, was like, yo, what is going on? You're like cranky as fuck. Like you're
Ooh.
not being like great. Like and it was true, but he was just elaborating on the fact that he said, you have a residency, and every day that you weren't on your residency, you were traveling somewhere else to play. He said, you're not doing that now. That's like your drug. He's like, that's
Yeah.
your addiction. And when you take that away, and then you like look at all of these music lovers who they travel to like 10, 20 festivals. What happens when they don't have that? What happens when they don't have their friends and that human interaction where their phone goes dead for 5 days and they're at the campsite with their homies? Like, you get people implode. And that's what we saw happen, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I know. Yeah, 100%. We're missing that connection to humans even too. That's I mean, it's something that I figured out with VR during quarantine. I felt like I was one of the first people to experience like getting
How
back
is that? I have
into.
not done that.
Oh, it's amazing. The communities that are in there are exactly like the rave communities. They basically built raves in VR, and I got to join a bunch of communities and really like connect with people. And I honestly felt like I was one of the first people to get that feeling back, because you're right. Like I was
That's
cranky.
sick.
I was like getting upset with everything. And then as soon as I put on the headset and like went into my first VR rave, I was like, whoa, I just realized what I was missing. I was like, oh shit, I'm missing my addiction. Like you were saying, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is I needed to feel connected to other humans. And it, yeah, it made like a switch flip in my head. That's like, oh, we're doing this for communities. Like we're doing this to connect to other humans. And when we don't have that, it's not good. It's
Yeah,
really bad for your mental health.
absolutely. And it's just like, especially like, I get it. Like, I am a homebody. Like, I am an introvert, but I enjoy being around music. I enjoy being around live music. Like, you can catch me at the back of any festival crowd, like chilling, watching everything. Like, I love people watching. And it's just our breed of people, whether you're on the back end of the industry or you are just a music lover. We're not designed to be isolated like this. The human
Yeah.
species just in general isn't designed to have no social interaction. It's just not. And I feel like we sometimes get lost on the back end of the industry with all of the people and the networking and this and that, but we don't realize that if our community is not there and built, these festivals don't happen and they don't continue. So it's like, it's so important that we continue to focus on bringing new people into this genre and throwing successfully like safe curated events to move
And
forward.
that's what I also got excited about in VR chat, is because a lot of those people hadn't experienced festivals ever, and I'm like, oh shit,
Oh my
like
god.
y'all, like I need to show y'all this, like in like yeah, because and like hopefully I get to meet a lot of these people that I've met online, and they get to experience their first festival. But at the time during quarantine, it was such a fulfilling experience, and I felt
Yeah.
like it got me ahead in where my mindset was, as far as like just getting depressed and getting down. It just made me realize, like, oh, as soon as this shit opens up, I know what I need to be doing. I know, like, I have these goals now, and I know what's important to me and what actually matters. And yeah, VR chat just like blew my mind. It's like, yeah, it's like going to a whole other dimension. But
I know Secret Sky was in like they had like a VR aspect to it, which
Mhm.
was like really really dope. I obviously like did not partake in that aspect, but I definitely feel like I feel like when we return to normal, people will still Twitch stream and people will still do events in VR. I feel like this
Oh
whole
yeah,
other aspect to our industry has now been opened up because I don't know about you, but like I had never downloaded OBS. I had no idea what the
me
fuck
neither.
any of this shit was before quarantine.
I kind of knew what it was, but I wasn't hands on with it, or didn't. And I barely used my VR headset. It was just sitting next to my desk, like kind
Mhm.
of just like collecting dust. I would use it every once in a while, but once quarantine happened, I was on it like at least like a couple times a week, going to shows, or like literally
That's
like
crazy.
raves in
Yeah.
VR. And actually, yeah, it's to bring it on a point back to like kind of girls in the industry. One of the biggest impacts that happened to me, or like things that happened to me during quarantine, was like meeting this girl rave promoter in VR chat. And she was from Portland,
Okay.
but she started throwing her own parties in VR, and was like building this community. Like she has her own Discord. It's like run way better than any other Discord that I've ever seen. And like the way that it's
Damn,
like,
that's lit.
I mean, because they're all computer nerds, they've been on VR chat even before quarantine. So I
Mhm.
was just kind of just like, she just kind of like found me on Twitch and was like, "Hey, we need DJs." Kind of like the Ritz approached you. It was just
Yeah, yeah.
like I was just on Twitch streaming, and she's like, "Oh, you're a DJ. Like, you want to come play?" And then she realized, like, "Oh wait, I have your music." And like, "Oh wait, like,
She's like, "Oh shit."
yeah, like yeah." And then I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm down. I have a headset." And so we just like, we had like almost like a conversation like this, but in VR. And I was having
That's crazy.
conversations with her, but like she's standing there, and we're like doing this to each other, and like just like pointing at each other. It felt just like the connection was even closer. Like we're literally talking to each other right there. Like if you turn your head, you only hear it on this side. You can walk around them, and like it's like you're there with them. So I had this like really solid connection with this girl rave promoter in Portland who's throwing her own shows. Her name's Flying Claws, by the way. Shout out
Okay,
Flying Claws.
sick.
But she really helped me like realize like what is important for throwing shows even more so than I already knew before. Like she has like such a huge focus on the lighting, and like the environment that it's in. Like one of her biggest things was like all these VR clubs in VR chat are basically replicating like the Ritz, like a club. Like
Yeah.
everybody's building clubs when you could build whatever you want. So she's like, why are we doing that? Let's build like look at the tapestry behind me. Like her
Yeah.
worlds literally look like that. Like they didn't look like
I want to be
reality.
raving on a fucking mountain in an igloo.
Yeah,
That's what like I
exactly.
want to be doing.
Yeah, she built like a Christmas igloo like place that's like
That is
outdoors,
so dope.
and it's like the sky's all rainbows. It's crazy looking. And then the other one of my favorite ones was she redid Stonehenge, and just had like couches around, and like
Oh my
a
god.
pool, and like the DJ
But
played
dude,
like in Stonehenge.
that's like the future. Isn't that wild though?
Yeah.
Like eventually virtual reality will be so close to our reality
Yeah.
that people will make a choice whether they want to live in VR or they want to live here. And I
Yeah.
really do think that will happen before we pass, like
Yeah.
fully.
Definitely. I think it's people already made that decision
Oh
right
my
now. Like
god.
they are on VR chat every day, and that's what they do. And they have girlfriends in VR. And
Oh
yeah,
my god.
they chill. They like build their own like mansions and just watch movies and just hang out with people, and like it's like they're
It's
living
like
their best
fuck
life.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're living their dream life. They're like, okay, I've experienced life. I don't really fuck with it. I'm gonna go here and
Yeah.
just go from there.
I mean, it's inevitable. But yeah, she taught me a bunch of stuff about like how to throw a party the right way. And I think it's on the same tip that Pasquale and Donnie are on. Like they they don't just focus on like who has the sickest drops. They're
Yeah.
like focusing on so much more. There's
So
so much,
much more.
there's other things that go into it. And she really taught me a lot of the lighting and the artistic, you know, part of building the world is to cater to girls, since she's a girl, and she really tries to make it feel like warm and welcoming, whereas like a guy who builds a world like usually ends up making, like I said, like a club or like something
Yeah.
that's indoors. And when you're in VR, you have the chance to just be outdoors, and it feels way better than just like being stuck inside again with a headset
Hmm.
on. But she like really brought that around to me, like, you know, make this a safe place for girls, because eventually all the guys will take over and like kick them out. It'll be male dominated, so she has to put in the effort to
Yeah.
like make sure that
But
doesn't
that's
happen.
so like true in regards to real life. And I feel
Yeah,
like that's
it
why it's
is.
so important that like a lot of, females who love, I know so many females who love this industry and like they do work for festivals or they do, AR work, like artist relations work and hospitality, but they want to be something more than that. And that's why it's so important that they don't stop and they keep going, because it's really up to them in the future to be in that ear of Disco Donnie or be in that, be that representative on the Insomniacs team that kind of represents I'm the, regular woman consumer. Like fuck like focusing on like the women artists, like focus on just like the women in general who attend the events. And
Yeah,
it's, being a girl is just so different than being a guy. And that's why it's beautiful, but that's why it's very hard for, an up and coming artist being a girl just going to guys and asking for advice, because it's so different, because our perspectives are so different, you
yeah.
know?
I'm sure you're gonna make, that's why I get excited about you sharing your insight on everything, because it's just gonna make, it's gonna enable other girls to like feel confident in approaching these situations and figuring it out on their own, because they're gonna be like, oh, she's doing it, and like, you know, she's giving me solid advice on how to interpret all of this. And it's just gonna, yeah, create a whole new wave that's about to come. But yeah,
Absolutely. And it's like half my students are girls too, which is like
nice.
fucking dope, you know? So it's like I don't get me wrong, I love the guys I teach, but it's really cool because we have these transparent discussions that are outside of the world of production,
Hmm.
where it's like, "Hey, I got this opportunity and now this person's making me feel this way, or I don't know how to approach this situation." And if you just have someone with a little bit more experience under their belt there to resonate with you and like as another woman, like it's going to help you a lot more than if you just have a guy telling you to ignore it or
Yeah,
do whatever, because there are issues that you just do have to deal with and certain people don't get put through them. So I love having the kind of control to set a kind of wavelength for these girls to follow, where hopefully I will have them avoid some of the mistakes that I made, and that's the point of it all. And then they turn around and they do the same thing for another girl, and
yeah,
that's how it grows and it becomes easier for women to enter this field.
yeah. There's no way it's not gonna grow with
Yeah.
like that mindset, which is the best part about it. Yeah,
Yes.
I started. I just had these crazy epiphanies after doing VR chat, where it's just like, oh, like why are we like I feel like girls are being like excluded from a lot of these things. Like it's because I mean, guys are just thinking about like how to impress other guys too. You know, they're just like,
Yeah.
let's go hard, let's do
Yeah.
this and stuff. So, but that's another reason why I got into house, because I was like, you know, like girls can just like relax and listen to this, and they don't have to like worry about like mosh pits sometimes. So it got me excited
Yeah.
to play more house music. So I'm like, cool, now more people can enjoy it, you know, because
Yes.
I just want more and more people to enjoy it. And but yeah, it's a lot of it comes down to like the lighting, the like a vibe of the club, like making it a safe place for girls to feel comfortable. That's like a huge thing that I think we should start focusing on as an industry. Like what like other
There's a
things.
psychology behind it too,
Yeah.
there really is. And it's like I talk about it with artists in the standpoint of like there are legitimate like frequencies that make people feel comfortable, and like that maybe be going a little bit too far, but from like the lighting standpoint and the way that you have like your employees working at the club and the way that certain people handle things all formulates this experience that you're creating for the customer.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I was gonna bring up another question. I was gonna
Yeah,
ask.
do it, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes. Anything guys can do for girls in the industry to help?
Ooh, okay. Well, what I love is that artists sometimes undermine their power that they have on their platforms. Artists have a lot of fucking power on these platforms, per
Mhm.
se, to Twitter especially. And what I love is that, you know, a lot of times in the past, especially before COVID, you know, people are like, oh, artists, just like keep to your fucking self. You guys know how to make art. Don't talk about other things. And I
Mhm.
love artists, you know, if they feel it's necessary or if they feel willing to. I like them speaking out about things that they believe in. I like them talking about politics. I like them inviting us kind of into their personal life because there is a person, you know, there's Subtronics and then there's Jesse, you know, there's Crizzly and then there's Chris. So it's like you do have a person behind the project, and I think there's some form of relatability that people find when artists open up on their platforms and speak what they're feeling from their like personal experience in their personal life. And what I love is that I do look at Jesse as a great example, that he's given a lot of these underground producers kind of this platform to stand on with his new label, as you know, as of a lot of other artists like Ula Sile's label and stuff like that, where, you know, it gets these new artists in the faces of the larger labels.
Mhm.
Is that I just wish, again, don't fucking go support a girl because she's a girl. Support a girl because you like her music, because she makes good music, because she has, you know, a good message, because she has some other cool, dope thing she's pushing, whether it's a clothing line or a radio show. And, you know, just make a cognizant effort if you fuck with their stuff, whether they're a girl or a guy. Like, don't think you're above shouting them out. Don't
Yeah.
think you're above supporting them. And I think that's the most that can be done from an artist standpoint of guys. And I think the big players, such as like Disco Donnie and Pasquale, and like, I know they root for women. I just think the more people that are potentially women on their team that have that as their priority and not just like a hey, it's kind of like a check mark in a box that we have to check off when we make
Yeah.
a lineup. If it's more of like a focal point of like, hey, how can we kind of bring this to fruition where we've got either, you know, just a good distribution of them on a lineup, or hey, let's do a live stream, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that, let's do a spotlight. There's so many ways with social media nowadays that you can be highlighting you know, the right person. But the other end of that is the thing that I don't agree with is like, fuck you guys, you're not supporting women, da 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 da. Like, no, like you should support someone who you like their stuff just as you would with a guy, you know. But I think that there are a lot of women who are bringing great stuff to the table, and it's hard because of what I said earlier, where we are still in that one kind of bowl where all the women get put in. And
Mhm.
if one woman does something that, you know, maybe isn't the most respectable, or maybe it doesn't portray the best image, it's hard because I see it fall back on all of the other women in that
Right.
bowl.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, oh, she's ghost produced for, so they're all fucking ghost produced for.
Mhm.
Oh, she played a pre-recorded set, or she did this, so she doesn't care about her image, she doesn't care about her body, like X, Y, and Z. And just like if you did some outlandish shit, I wouldn't go and look at fucking Mode Step and say, oh, fuck them, Crizzly did some whack
Yeah.
shit, so like
It's
they're
yeah.
whack, you
Yeah, I
know?
was I was thinking, I mean, yeah, maybe these like girl questions are pretty basic, but I just don't have, I'm not a girl and I don't really like get to talk to many girl
No, but
producers.
you asked great questions where like I think I'm being as transparent as I possibly could be, and like,
But I love the mindset where you're coming from, where it doesn't matter. Like, and that's where I think we should be too. I think
yeah,
deep down that's what I think. Like it's not like I think it's kind of whack too sometimes when it's like an all girl lineup just to do it. And
I hate that. I hate
yeah,
that. And but like the thing on the back end of it is like, if you're approaching it as an all girl lineup is the selling point, that's
right,
whack. But
yeah,
if you're approaching it as like, hey, I really fuck with these people, and we've got this girl who released on Confessions, and this girl's on Disciple, and this girl's here, and they're all killing it in their own region, and we respect them, so we're putting them on a lineup. Like, I respect that. But
yeah.
I think
There's a right way to do it for
there's a
sure.
right way to do it for sure. And I think the like long term of it is, if you do it because you respect the woman and you like her art and you like the craft that she's developing, it's going to mean a lot more than you doing something for a woman because somebody's in your ear saying, "Oh my God, we don't have enough women." You
Yeah,
know?
it's the selling point at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think the way you're approaching it is like I said before, a foundation of like you putting in the work, you understanding what you need to do. And I think honestly, what you're doing is going to help out more than like Pasquale or Donnie putting a girl on the lineup. That
Well,
that
I
doesn't.
fucking hope so.
Yeah, no, because that doesn't fix anything. Like
Doesn't fix anything.
the advice that you're giving to young and up and coming girl producers, and like you are essentially becoming like a gatekeeper, and now and
Yeah.
but you're doing everything in your power to make it right. And
Yeah.
that's gonna help more than someone just putting someone on a lineup. I think helping translate these like or having these like transparent conversations with other girls and like y'all figuring it out and really like
Absolutely.
it's about a process of elimination. Like this doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This matters. We need to
Yes.
focus on this and not be distracted by what
And
all these other things are.
I think the biggest thing too is like I don't want women to be placeholders. And I think the only way that you get them to not be placeholders is by having them really be good at what they're doing. And that only takes like time and experience and work and paying attention to your craft. And I think that's where like I think a lot of women would I think some women don't agree with me. I think it's like, hey, like you need to fucking have as much women as guys on the lineup, and that's how it is. Well, unfortunately, if you look at if you like take the NBA as an example, how many people are going to NBA male games versus how many people are going to NBA women games? And then you look at the price difference on what they're paid annually, and you have to understand that's coming from attendance, that's coming from viewership, that's coming from all these different other aspects. Well, I hate to break it to you, there's 10 times as many guys as there are girls. So there's going to be a lesser amount of girls that have, the capabilities to kind of hang with the guys. But I think the only way that we become more widely accepted and you start seeing more women is the more that you can beat into your mind as an up and coming female that, like, hey, I can be good at this and I'm going to be good at this, but taking shortcuts, even though they're going to be presented to me, while I can take them, don't make that become my focus of what I'm going to use to utilize to get where I want to go. Say, okay, this was an awesome opportunity. I got booked for this Insomniacs event. Super dope. I know I wouldn't have been booked for it if I wasn't a girl, but I did, and I took advantage of it. I came and I was prepared. I met a lot of people. Now it's my time to go home, put my head down, and work on as much music as I possibly can, and then follow up with these people 6 months down the road and say, hey, so nice to meet you. I've been taking this time to learn. I've been taking this time to work on music. Here it is. I hope you fuck with it. Done.
Yeah, I love that. That's it. And it's absolutely love that because you said exactly what I would want to say, but I feel like I can't say that because it'd be fucked up.
Yep.
but
And you
but
can't. And that's why it's like, I can't resonate with someone who is of a different race. I can tell you my perspective, but I'm not that person. So I don't feel like it's my place. So I appreciate you like saying that too, because we are in this world where if you are not that gender or you are not that race, you don't necessarily have the grounds to make a public statement
yeah,
and it be
I don't
taken
have
legitimately.
I don't have that grounds, and you do. And exactly what you said is how I feel, even in a guy's standpoint. That's exactly what the mindset that all my friends have. That like
Mm-hmm.
we talk to each other and like hype each other up. Like, no, we're doing
Yeah.
this right. Like, and it's weird because you're breaking it down, and you're 100% correct on everything. And that's but like the exact train of thought is what I think of for guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It
the
is. It's
yeah
very similar. It's like, hey, this fucking sucks because this guy bought his way onto UTA and now he's
yeah
on all these festivals and he doesn't even have fucking 5,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Connect the dots for me. I don't understand. But at the end of the day, like, you can't control that. You can only control you. And there is room for everybody. There is room for all of these girls. You're not going to lose a fucking booking because they decided to book Alice in Wonderland. Like, just keep working and they will find room for you when it's time.
yeah. Damn, that drives it home. I
I
love
know
it.
it does drive it home. Thank you. This ended up being like a double interview almost, but I appreciate these conversations. This is my favorite podcast in a fucking minute. So thank you.
No, this is a conversation. That's what it is.
I need to come out to Texas. We're eventually
Hell
gonna
yeah.
fucking squad meet up. and it'll be fun. But I greatly appreciate your time. This was a great conversation. So
Yeah,
thank you,
you'll have to come to
Chris.
Texas.
Yes,
And
yes,
yeah,
yes. I will.
gonna
And
happen.
you, me, Aaron, we'll all fucking get in the studio. We'll hang. We'll mix. It'll be dope.
Perfect.
But yeah, thank you so much, dude. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye, man. See ya.
Peace.
Peace.